You'll be moving to the right. Okay, welcome to the January 5th Historic District Commission meeting. I would like to say the board's actions in these matters have been deemed to be quasi-judicial in nature. If any person believes any member of the board has a conflict of interest, that issue should be raised at this point or it will be deemed waived. Okay, so we're going to approve some minutes. We have December 1 and December 15. Has everyone looked at these, and what comments do we have?
I don't have any comments. No, they were fine.
Let's have a motion.
All right, I move to approve the December 1st and December 15th meeting minutes.
Seconded.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? All right, so we have our approval, and then we're going to immediately jump on to administrative approvals.
Why don't you do the election of officers?
All right, yeah, before we do that, we're going to elect the offices that
Why don't you, did
we
you
need
introduce everybody?
once a month. So does anybody have a suggestion?
I will be happy to nominate John Wyckoff as our chair once again.
I'll second that.
Thank you very
Second.
much. Should I be saying? Well, all those in favor? say
Yeah.
aye.
Aye.
All those against? All righty. So now we need a vice chair?
I would like to nominate Reagan Rudick as vice chair.
Seconded.
Thank you.
Okay, so all those in favor, say aye.
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 Against? All right, so we have a vice chair and a chair. Thank you very much for your confidence. I'll try not to screw up too much. But right now, we have administrative approvals, and we're going to pull out Bow Street, number 1, and number 4, which is 442 Middle Street. So if someone would make that motion.
So moved?
Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we could immediately jump onto those or listen to Nick go through the other ones. What do you want to do, Nick?
So 99 Bow is out and Middle Street
Correct.
and Court Street, correct?
That's
Yeah,
not correct.
well, I just have to recuse myself from Court
Okay,
Street,
so
that's
you
all.
just won't vote on that?
Yeah.
All right. Let me quickly go through. 462 Middle is a request to replace louvered shutters with paneled shutters.
Nick, I just had a question about that. I looked at what pictures I had of that. Are we changing what had been approved before or something that's existing? Because I didn't see the shutters on the existing structure.
No, I don't think they were approved. Maybe they were approved as louvered shutters, but either way, they aren't there, and they want to put panel shutters on. They haven't ordered anything.
Uh-huh.
Did they provide any historic pictures that supported one or the other, or there weren't any before?
No, they did not provide any, and I don't know what was on there before, if that matters.
I mean, it's,
Dan?
I have a question, yeah. That's a whole strip of Middle Street that 14, or 11 out of the 14 are all shuttered, so I think it fits in well. Most of them are original wood. My question is how they're going to attach them, though. Because there's some that are just,
Very good.
you know,
Very good question.
tacky, just nailed to the siding. Do we know that?
I don't see that they've mentioned that, but I think we can clearly stipulate there be pintles and dogs to
Very
make them
good.
look like they're operable.
Yeah.
Yep.
That
Right,
should be a
so-
stipulation.
yeah, stipulate that they're not just attached to the exterior walls, but are actually on hinges and,
Yeah.
At least these are real raised panels. I only say that driving down Pleasant Street. I happened to notice a newly constructed building that we approved. And the solid shutters are not really raised panels. They're just kind of flat panel. And I was a little disturbed with that, but
And Nick, do we know how many shutters are being put on? Is it just the front
I
all the way
think it's the front
around?
of the house, but
Because it doesn't really say that either.
Well, I'm assuming it's at least the front. Is it a disaster if they decide to put them on the side?
Existing approved louvered shutters. No, whatever we approved
Okay.
before, I guess, it's okay.
You know, my thought, and maybe this is incorrect, but my thought was that it's a revival house. It's borrowing elements from another time, somewhat anachronistically. And the panel shutter or flat panel shutter, I don't think that this is a raised panel sort of operation. I think this is a flat panel, but that was a pretty typical revival shutter, and we see it many times. So whether it's the most accurate thing here or not, I can't see we're raising an issue about it. The building would look, as they say, some smart.
Thank you, David.
Okay, Nick, keep going.
Okay, so 160 Court Street, this is a request to re-roof the Feaster building on Court Street. They want to put a new shallow sloped roof with insulation on that roof, underneath the roof, and some probably gutters and downspouts to make that roof work. It's a flat roof now. This is the existing building on the screen.
Yeah.
So, Carla may be here if there's questions. That's what Craig Welch told me today.
Certainly
There's the
doesn't,
gutter system.
doesn't seem to be much insulation.
Is there anything else, Carla? No.
No change in the coping detail,
Well,
maybe
yeah.
slightly, just a little thicker.
Gutter.
Not that it truly matters.
Was there a question?
Is there a change in the coping detail?
At the eave?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, but there's also a fairly large gutter going on top of that. The purpose of this is, right now, we have central internal drains, and they drain out to Parrot Ave, and it's been determined by DPW that the water can't, that area can't handle the water, so we're bringing the water up to Court Street as part of, so we're rerouting the water, and in the process, we're re-roofing Feaster as well. So part of our site plan approval for the Court Street project was rerouting the roof drainage off of Feaster to Court and away from Parrot Ave.
So
So-
your intention is to re-pitch the roof using the insulation?
Yes, right, because right now it's central, and we're draining it off. Because rerouting the drains through the building that now sort of wind their way back out to Parrot Ave is quite a daunting undertaking, especially because this is all, precast slab. So it's, we decided gutters would be the way to go.
Thank you. Any other questions? No?
Okay. Well, the last, maybe similar one, an easy one, is 80 Fleet Street, which is also a roof replacement. I think it's asphalt or tar with stone. They want to put this PVC-type roof on the top of the McIntosh building at 80 Fleet. There is no roof or gutter or drain system, I don't think, being proposed here.
Well, they don't let us know that, do they?
So it's a change in materials for the membrane roof or the roofing system that's on there to a PVC-based membrane. Any questions on that?
I've yet to develop an aesthetic for either, so good with me.
Right.
There's no way you'll see it except for a drone.
No.
Till we get that helicopter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, one of these days.
Okay, so.
Okay, that's it.
So do you want to vote on 160 Court and 80 Fleet Street as presented?
Well, I need to
Okay.
recuse myself from Court Street.
What about the middle?
We haven't done that yet. We're pulling out middle.
462?
442, is that?
462.
Yeah. Are we not pulling that out?
No, the shutters.
No.
No, 462, we did the shutters. There's
Right.
another one on here for Middle Street, 442.
Right.
Yeah,
I
but
thought
we
we
haven't
were-
voted
We just
yet.
hadn't voted on it.
Okay,
So,
We haven't talked about the shingles, the chimney removal yet.
no,
I thought we were voting on a few, and we just making
so-
sure that
voting
we're.
on
May I-
3.
May I-
Yes,
May
certainly.
I help here? May I make a motion that we approve 462 Middle Street and
80
80
Fleet.
Fleet Street
Okay.
with stipulations on 462 Middle.
Yes,
Let's do those two, and then we can do 160 without Reagan.
correct.
Okay, so I've
Okay.
moved for those two.
All righty. Would someone like to make that motion?
She might,
I did.
I'll second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay, and can we have, I'll make a motion then to approve 160 Court Street with no stipulations.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So we have those, and now we have,
Let's do middle. Let's
okay,
do the chimneys.
442 and 444 Middle Street.
Okay, this one, on the surface, appears to be relatively straightforward. But the devil's in the details, that's why it's here. These two chimneys are on this house as shown in the image on the screen and in your packet. The applicant's proposing to remove those chimneys, presumably into the attic, and then rebuild them in kind using restoration brick and lime-based mortar. So I don't really have an issue with it,
No.
but it was pulled out, so let's,
Who had a question on this?
I had a question, because in the discussion that we had in December on faux chimneys, the question was raised about, or I raised the issue, that we make every effort to ask people when they have original windows that they try to repair and restore those windows. And I think that we should take the same approach to chimneys. Unless these chimneys, there's something wrong with them, they can't be repaired, to just take them off and put faux ones up seems to be,
Well, the question is, are these faux? I
didn't
think
think
it
they
I
seems
were
don't
like these are
understand
just
that.
rebuilding.
It's not,
they're restoration bricks, I don't think it's a veneer.
okay, so they're not,
I
okay,
think
I
they're
get,
keeping the
they're
chimneys.
taking them down underneath the roof
And rebuild them.
and
the same.
rebuilding.
Margot, where did you see that, just to make sure I'm not reading it wrong?
Yeah, well, no, because I read they were going to repair the chimneys underneath the roof and maybe parts
Yeah, it's a
them.
restoration brick,
okay,
and I've
maybe
showed
I
them the brick.
misunderstood. I thought
Okay,
they
no
were
problem,
taking
that
them,
makes sense.
I thought they were taking them off.
No, they're taking them off and putting them back with new brick, that's restoration brick.
Yeah.
So it's not a faux chimney, it'll actually still function
Okay.
as a
Then I'm good.
termination valve.
I-
Okay,
I misunderstood, thank you.
okay, so let's vote on that one. As
Certainly,
presented.
would somebody have a motion?
I'll move that we approve, this one, was it
Number
444
4, yeah.
Middle Street?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those against? All right, now we have 99 Bow Street. What do we have here, Nick?
Okay, the applicant, as you know, Mark McNabb for the property was here, I believe, the beginning of December.
Uh-huh.
Could possibly have been earlier, I can't remember anymore. But this project was approved for 99 Bow Street with a stipulation that the sculptured art be removed from what was approved and resubmitted for administrative approval, either as modified or, in this case, in defense of what was
Yeah.
removed from that application back in December. So I believe Terrence, you out there?
Just to clarify this discussion, usually when somebody comes back with something we have either rejected or pushed off, it's a rehearing. They're asking for a rehearing, but apparently we made a stipulation that he could come back with changes or no changes to the plan, and essentially we would look at it again. And so that's where we're at this point.
I'm not seeing Terrence. Is Terrence, are you out there somewhere in the hall?
Is there any discussion up here on this? Do you want to discuss it, Mark?
Well, John, I was hoping that Terrence would come here and explain his letter to us, because I take issue with some of the suggestions made in this letter. One, that we're not qualified, and the second, more ugly statement was that we had a problem with the black sailors depicted in the image. I really take offense to that. We gave very clear, distinct comments that this was, we had problems with the depiction of whaling. And whaling was not, while we did have some whaling, Portsmouth is not a whaling town. So I can't support this. It's just, you know, I was hoping Terrence would come here and speak to this. I can just tell you that I stand by my earlier position that this is not appropriate for Portsmouth based on the whaling references, and that also, when it comes to public art is a collaboration. It's not one person's mission or statement. So there has to be some collaboration involved. So I stand by my position and will not support this.
And if anyone's interested, I have a couple books here which defend our position. Port of Portsmouth Ships and the Cotton Trade by Ray Brighton, if anyone wants to look at it. And this other book here is Black Portsmouth by Valerie Cunningham. And both of them explain blackjacks, apparently is a term that they use, and the whaling situation in Portsmouth, which essentially was to bring oil here from other cities and process it for people to burn in their lamps, but we didn't really send out whaling ships here. So to me, this is also, I can't support it. Yes, Reagan?
Yeah, and I just want to say, it's too bad Terrence isn't here. I appreciate his letter and his need to sort of justify his artwork, which again is subject to, you know, anybody's ideas or what I'm looking for?
Interpretation.
Opinions, interpretations, all of that stuff. It's very,
Criticisms.
it's very fluid. And again, and I echo what Martin said, we certainly didn't refuse this on
No.
any racial basis or
No.
because we didn't like the art or we don't want art or we don't appreciate the gift of art in Portsmouth at all. It was simply that it was just a slight skewing and, in our opinion, a misrepresentation of what the history of Portsmouth is. That's all. And I have nothing against whales. I think whales do also represent a lot of marine life. Just if there could be a little bit of a give or conversation about this. I didn't think that we were saying it's a hard no
Yeah.
for it altogether. So.
Well, so at this point, I think we should vote on this and let him come back with something else or whatever.
What are we voting on?
Essentially,
Really
we're voting on
understand.
his wanting to place these
As
these,
previously designed.
bas reliefs as previously approved, in other words, with no changes, on both sides of the deck on 99 Bow Street. That's what we're voting on.
Wasn't previously approved.
No.
It was presented, right? Previously presented, and we put it off for a rehearing.
Okay, and that's what we're having, and I'm set to move on if everyone else is.
The only thing I have to say about his letter, he's right that we struggle with who is the group that's responsible with art.
Yeah.
But I think he missed the concept that many of these members brought up, that it's more shipbuilding than anything else.
Yes?
Well, there's also a future to this issue. We can't just look back. So simply speaking, I wouldn't want the sculpture to mislead people who are new to this town to believe that we were actually a whaling city.
Yeah,
Very
exactly.
good.
I think any lawyer could rationalize any argument to suit his client, and I think while the letter is succinctly written, I think it just provides a viewpoint that we already resolved was not an appropriate one.
Thank you, Heinz. Would somebody like to make a motion, or David, would you have anything? Okay, motion?
It's been said.
Should we make a motion?
I don't, what would be the appropriate motion to this?
The motion would be to not approve, all
I will move that we not approve this,
Yep.
Mr. Chairman.
right, second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Okay.
Aye. Okay. Moving on. Public hearing, new business. petition of John C. and Jane C. Angelopoulos, owners, for property located at 36 State Street, wherein permission is requested to allow renovations to an existing structure, replace windows. As per plans on file in the planning department, said property is shown on Assessor Map 105 as Lot 9, lies within the Character District 4 and Historic Districts. Who is here to present this? Yeah, please introduce yourself.
John Angelopoulos.
All right, welcome. Doing here, 36.
So could you?
Can you introduce what
Oh,
you
he
want to
did.
do? Oh,
Oh.
not yourself, the project.
I simply want to replace 5 windows. These windows were originally approved by the Historic Commission probably 30 years ago. I bought the building, and they're failing. The muttons are falling off on the exterior. They're the old-fashioned, these windows 30 years ago had the muttons were sort of put on, and
Snap on.
there were supports to, they're crap, basically. They're old Harvey windows. They're 30 years old, and they're deteriorating and falling apart, and I just have to replace them. I spoke to Nick at the planning board. He recommended that, because I just simply want to, do whatever you guys want, and basically, he said the Anderson 400 series would be agreeable, so that's what I presented. These simply be replacing, there'll be nothing touched on the exterior, just the interior trim will come off. Replacements will go in. It'll be wood on the inside, and I believe fabrics on the outside.
So it's 2 windows on the side and 3 looking out over
Correct.
the back?
Correct.
And this is just that first floor or second floor?
It's a second-story
Second
building, yep.
All right. So is there any mention of screens? Normally, we request half screens?
Half screens?
Half screens, not full screens.
Well, I'll see what they can do. I guess
They could-
Does
they
Anderson have half screens?
Yes, they do.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody else have some discussion?
No,
I mean, are those windows the ones that you want?
We have
Sure,
approved them.
we can't say that.
Oh.
We're not going to tell you which windows to put in or which are, we have a list of windows that we have approved, and there are different windows that are appropriate for different buildings. This looks like a fairly modern addition
Is
to the
yeah,
building.
Is 30 years old, correct.
Yeah,
Company,
so I think that an Anderson window is fine
Yeah.
here. And I assume that it will be white and everything will match the trim.
Correct.
and
There'll be
all that
nothing,
stuff.
there'll be no difference on the exterior or the interior. Wood on the inside and white on the out, correct.
If there's no other comments?
I want to just clarify something. Are we 100% certain there's a spacer
Oh,
and they're true simulated divided lights? So there's a mutton on the outside, inside, and between the glass?
Correct. I believe that's the
Just making
400
sure.
series.
Yeah, that's the 400.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought,
Well,
okay.
Yep.
Don't want to
I
surprise.
actually looked at them. I went, yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
is there any member of the public would like to speak on this proposal? And nobody's dinging online, if the online works, I don't know.
Hang on. Put your hand up if you'd like to speak. There is nobody raising their hand.
Okay, I'm going to close this. And would somebody make a proposal, please?
Yeah, I'll propose that we approve as presented with a half-screen stipulation.
Not a problem.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, say
Do you
aye.
want your findings of fact?
Yeah, that would be good.
Findings of fact, preserve the integrity of the district and is compatibility of design with surrounding properties.
There we go. Okay, so all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? You have your approval.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, moving on to work session's old business. I've got some to postpone here. So I think I'm going to read, do I read these whole things, Nick? Or just-
No, I think you can read the
Okay.
address. They've been here
All right,
before.
request to postpone petition of 64 Vaughn Mall LLC owner for property located at 64 Vaughn Street, That's under public hearings, old business, and then work sessions, old business is request to postpone work session requested by Gregory J. Morneau and Amanda B. Morneau, owners for property located at 137 Northwest Street. And then under work sessions, new business, request to postpone by 129 State Street LLC, owner for property located at 129 State Street. So if we would have a motion to.
So moved?
Can I just say
yeah,
something
can
quick
I-
about
yeah.
137 Northwest?
Yes,
We
please.
told them
Thank you.
they would only get one more bite at the apple. They chose not to come.
Yeah.
They've been made aware they need to resubmit.
Start over.
So that one will be a withdrawal. Don't include that in your postponement,
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just postpone to indeterminate dates or,
yeah, till it's refiled as a public hearing. How about that?
fine. Okay, so, motion.
All right, I move that we postpone 64 Von Mall and 129 State Street.
Seconded?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, there we go. Now, we're half done already.
We're in work session. We're
Oh,
gonna
I
stay
know,
here or
it's
go
work
down there?
session. So we have one requested by One Rains Avenue. That looks like it's net. LLC, 31 Rains LLC, 203 Maplewood Avenue, LLC, owners for property located at 1 Rains Avenue, 31 Rains Avenue, and 203 Maplewood Avenue, wherein permission is requested to allow the construction of a 4 to 5-story mixed-use building and a 5-story hotel, as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 123, Lot 14, Map 123, Lot 13, Map 123, Lot 12, lies within Character District 4 and Historic District. Who's here to speak on this and work session? Should we go down?
One down?
It's up to you.
I'm okay with it if you are. But if we're socially distancing, I can present from here. It's up to you.
I mean, we're not all that distant right now, so.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't know.
What do you want to do?
I'm happy to go down. I
Okay.
suppose, if we have all our masks, unless anybody else.
No matter. Either way.
Yeah,
John?
I'll go down.
Go.
Sure, leave me here.
Change chairs. Yeah, we'll go down. Carla, just hold your breath the whole time, please. Okay, thank you. Nick, you staying up
I
here?
have to.
So I have to share the anecdote that,
So Carla, speak a little louder
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
and pull a mic over a little
You can
closer.
pull that over if you're a quiet talker.
Yes, well, with a mask on, I am. I just have to share this amusing anecdote that 36, your approval tonight, 36 Straight Street,
Yeah.
was my very first presentation in front of this board 30 years ago. So I am the one who had that approved.
What kind of windows?
Harvey's, huh?
No, there weren't, I don't know that we even specified back then. I don't think we did. So Evan Tormey is joining us
To hear?
remotely. Do you have him on the,
Speak loudly, everybody, and if
is
anybody's going
Evan
to speak,
on,
pull those towards you if people are going to talk, so everyone can hear.
is Evan on the line?
One
Do you
second.
have him, Evan
will-
Tormey?
Have a look. Probably. Wait, where'd he go? Yes, and he's been promoted, but he's muted.
Okay.
Do you want him to speak now, or
No, but he.
he's on the
doesn't have to
line?
speak right now, but
And now he's unmuted. Can you hear us, Evan?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, very well. Perfect.
All right.
All right, Evan is joining us, I think, from Colorado.
Montana.
Montana also.
Montana.
Okay, well, I'm certainly a New Englander for making that mistake. Okay, so, I did put this cover letter on here to sort of focus our, tasks for this evening. We wanted to, as we discussed in the last work session, we want to be sure to go through step 2 massing on the hotel building and then just sort of revisit the massing of the mixed use. It would be really helpful to the design team if we could get some feedback on architectural style, because the building type plays an integral role in the development of massing, and we really want to try to move forward jointly on that. We have a client here that is really partial to a more modern style building, so we're trying to respect that, respect his wishes for a more modern building in this location. And we just want to sort of,
Are you starting on that?
no, I'm doing a quick review here.
Okay.
And then,
wondering.
so 1.0 of this reviews the building footprints. 2.0 is the massing, sort of 360 around the hotel building. 3.0 is an intro to some possible styles, and the 4.0 series gets into some design updates that the team has been working on for the mixed-use building, and then we did improve the connectivity in the landscape plan between the buildings and the greenway, and then we just included the usual reference pages. So do you want me to just go section by section and we can talk in between, or do you want me to go through the whole thing?
I think there's something that I'd like to say
Okay.
after discussing this with some other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that I realize what you just said about your client, and
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us are uncomfortable with the style and design of the project, and we're wondering if it's time to break this mold of masonry, metal, and a little more masonry here and there, and, essentially getting all of your design out of projecting bays and calling that good enough. I think that I would like to say, and if anyone else wants to chime in, that especially like the condo building, which is very visible from the bridge, that you might want to think about rerouting to more of a traditional style on this structure, maybe using the material that you used on Court Street, something like that. So the only reason I want to bring this up now is because you'll start with this project with the design that you've chosen. And the only thing we do then is start nipping away at little things, but we're still stuck with what you've proposed. And I think that in this location, there's a lot of problems with that. And with that, I'll stop. Yes.
Well, I just was asking, just wanted to ask how many people you're speaking for.
A few.
Well, could we get their actual words?
If
Because
anyone
I
else
don't,
would like to speak.
I
that
don't
would be-
necessarily
You don't agree?
agree. No, I think this has been a location in town where, from our past North End charrettes, a lot of people in the community agreed that this was an area for contemporary architecture and design.
It's also an area for smaller buildings on the water.
And I agree with, that point I agree with too. That was gonna be one of my comments. So so I don't necessarily think that we need to be pushing a more traditional design. This is their design that they're bringing to us.
True.
I don't think we should be telling them how to design their buildings. So, I think we review
I don't
that.
necessarily agree. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, Margaret.
think the main issue for me, the same as I had for the project on Green, was it address on Green Street? This is too big for the location on the mill pond. If this were further set back, I wouldn't have a problem with the mass, but this is right on the pond. So I have an issue with mass to start off with. Regarding design, aesthetic, just a general statement would be, I'm fine with contemporary, but I would like it to have its own unique characteristics, and I'd like it to have its own voice. Right now, these are just beginning to look like cookie cutter, slightly different versions of other things. It's right on the edge, it's a gateway building. If it's going to be contemporary, I'm fine with that, but I'd like it to sing.
All right.
Anybody else, David?
I'm not here because of my sense of modernist architecture, and I'm sure you all understand that. In lieu of hewing something from wood on the site, I would be more comfortable to see elements from our community reflected in the building. Elements that I think of, Georgian architecture had an orderly expression of fenestration. Windows were part of a rhythm rather than design elements by themselves. I think I would like to see something that had a major thing that I look for in buildings is a ceremonial, if not, and for any other reason, entryway. That people, the trick-or-treat rule, that a 9-year-old kid with a pumpkin bag in their hand would know what door to knock on. And we laugh.
No, I get it,
We laugh.
absolutely.
Um,
I've just not heard that.
Again, in my historic Georgian and federal architecture, there was a celebrated entryway on most buildings. And I miss that in modern buildings, I think. I generally don't get the feeling that there's a thing there welcoming me, a thing there driving my attention. And it's usually a design centers around that, unlike a thing that some modern architecture is free-flowing, uses the roof lines and projections to describe themselves. There's another kind of language of delineated corners and rhythm in fenestration. That's what I would be comfortable with. I don't know that this is much of a fun moment for you.
Well, no,
I mean, considering what you started with, but
we're-
that's me.
Right, and that's what I think that, you know, each one of you represents is ideally representing some faction of Portsmouth, so that, you know, that you're representing the public, and this, you know, the historic district is a really keystone piece of the community. And, you know, it's really difficult with these peripheral sort of modern locations, because, you know, you really can do something different in a historic area, and it's a real challenge to to come up with exactly what that design approach is going to be that we all agree can be modern. Most of us agree that it can be modern. Seems to be a majority, but it has to be a certain kind of modern as defined by a historic past. And I think that's a tricky little thing to.
Go ahead. No, please, after you.
The way I approach viewing what we have done in the past in order to gain an understanding of where we should be going, or at least in terms of my own vision, I can help but feel that so many of the projects that we actually have approved would simply fail my standards. And when I look at the gyrations we have gone through, frequently also at the behest of our own discussions, where we add a turret here, you know, something else here, I call it Portsmouth Baroque. But I don't call any of it, not just, definitely not great architecture, but most of it is not even good architecture. So we get back to a kind of discussion, and we shouldn't have this now. What constitutes good architecture? You know? So if we go to the modern style, I would refer people to Scarpa, the Italian architect, or a very well-known Mexican architect whose name you need to guess now. But so much of what I see in Portsmouth just doesn't even cut the grade. I don't even understand how it got improved. And so my own personal way of moving forward is simply to understanding the dynamic of what you present to the HDC, and then what the HDC does to those designs. And all of a sudden, we literally have buildings by committee, but not by an architect who might also be an artist. And the failures are all around us.
Thank you for pointing out our failures.
We're condemned to this, then, by all description.
Well, this is tough. I think you can thread the needle and have a modern building, but it doesn't have to be an abstract modern building. It could be a modern building that with some human elements and some order and formality. And you have examples that you cite. You have on sheets 3.0, 3.1, 3.2, and I don't even want to mention 3.3 because I'm hoping we don't go in that direction, which I'm kind of seeing in what you're proposing. I think all of these are modern. Some are just modern in a way that has references to history, has formalities, it has balance and rhythm, hierarchy, it has corner elements, it has it has the kind of elements I think this project needs. If you look at 3.1, I think a great example is the upper left-hand corner.
That's exactly the one I've been looking at the whole time.
I think that's a successful project.
And what is it that draws you to that one? Because
Order.
that seems to be,
Order.
okay.
There is some balance, order.
It's got a corner element in it, so you get a focal point out of it. I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting you to jump right into there. I'm excited.
That's okay. I just think we need to lean more towards that.
Okay.
3.2, I could see something in the lower right-hand corner for 3. I'd hate to see an upper left-hand corner, which we're kind of seeing now. There's a modern architecture that's good because it really adheres to the principles and fundamentals of modernism. And then there's modern architecture is there because it's a cheaper way to construct. And I hope we don't go there.
It's modern with a big M and a little m.
Yeah, exactly. So, the fact that you provided these sheets tells me that, you can see that we can find a middle ground here. We can find a place to arrive, I think. We just want a modern architecture that's got some historic references. It doesn't have to say Portsmouth, which I don't know what is Portsmouth, but at least should say New England,
Right, I see what you mean.
I think, Dan, you're the only one that hasn't chimed in on this.
Well, I'm
Taking it away.
struggling to learn my modern architecture. And I'm accepting it more and more, especially with some balance and some highlights. So I that 3.1 upper left as one of my favorites. Because it's on the edge of things, though, I'm still gonna have some problems with mass. A hotel, I don't mind, that's back and I can mass a little bigger, but that corner is gonna be a tough one to put all 5 stores on there. That's my only, worries.
Reagan,
As a pronounced corner, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reagan, you
And
want?
I'll just chime in again. I mean, I didn't mean to turn it off. Yes, and obviously that one that we're all looking at is for reference. Please don't make that building here, because that's not appropriate for Portsmouth. But
Yes, we're not copying.
the order, the details, the trim, you know, all these things that are reflected, but it's obviously a modern building. I mean, I think that there are ways to do that here with brick and masonry, even with a little bit of metal here and there. But I also don't think this location, you couldn't build a totally traditional building here because you're already surrounded by very contemporary buildings, and it would just not work in its context.
I agree with that.
So, the massing is a different discussion. I also still think that it needs to be brought down as it faces the water. But I can get behind this. Yeah, I've always said this, it's an incredibly hard, thing to achieve, to be contextual in a historic, area and context. But make a building still look like it was built in the early 2020s.
Right.
Because 50 years from now, 100 years from now, that's what is going to be more appreciated. A building that reflects its time, not that is some fake,
Right.
you know,
A copy.
fantasy of something 100 years
Is
before.
that a
That's-
fantasy?
It kind of is a fantasy,
All right.
but.
Martin?
I forgot, I wanted to address the mass and scale. I don't, for what you have for mass and scale, I have no problem with it, because I've looked at the North End study, and then I see these beautiful renderings of buildings almost touching the water.
And
And
we're way back in
You
the,
dare do that, and
right.
people who promote those studies will be the first one to challenge you on being in the buffer.
Right,
So,
right.
you know, I saw those, great, cute little buildings all the way up to the water, two-story buildings.
In the
It-
buffer.
Why can't we do that? Well,
Yeah.
anyway, so massing and scale, if I'm just looking at this strictly for massing and scale, I can accept it.
You. I think,
Can I interrupt here? I'd be interested, and I think, not just this commission, but people that watch, because you know how big the viewership is. But tell me about the buffer, because before
Right.
before I knew there was a buffer, you know, because I'm old, right? But before I knew there was a buffer, I really thought, I was a David Holden acolyte.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see things, the city rise up from the water, like, you know, an imaginary Boston without Rose Wharf. And we're not getting that. And I'm under the impression that it's because of the buffer.
Right.
And so there's something about the buffer that makes it the third rail of architecture in this community.
Right.
And could you please articulate
well,
that?
there are a few appeals going on for buildings that have been permitted in the buffer with a lower massing in the buffer. So this building that we're proposing isn't having a step down toward the water. It's actually removing all structure between it and the water, as opposed to having a lower area within the buffer. And then, as of our last meeting, the top floor was drastically pulled back, so that top floor is really almost imperceivable from the perimeter. I mean, obviously, you can see it's there, but it makes a huge difference. You know that by looking at any of the buildings that step back to that degree in town. It really does minimize that impact. So rather than stepping down toward and into the 100-foot buffer, the team thought that another massing strategy that would really pull it back was to, pull that all in. So I mentioned the appeals for people who are in the 100-foot buffer, so we're really working very hard to stay out of that. Evan, did you want to add anything? Because you've been spearheading the planning board buffer situation. I just want to give you an opportunity to speak about it. Is he there?
Thanks, Carla. No, I think that was very well said. We did receive a conditional use permit and planning board approval for this design, keeping the buildings out of the buffer on the North Mill Pond at the planning board meeting last month. There is a very small sliver of the building fronting on Maplewood Avenue that's within the 100-foot buffer, but obviously Maplewood Avenue is between the building and the pond in that instance, and we are respecting the maximum setback on Maplewood Avenue, and that creates that little bit of sliver of one-story building that's within the buffer.
Yeah, that's an unusual, I think I understand what he was saying, is
Across the
actually the
street.
100 feet is measured from the mill pond on the other side
Correct.
of Maplewood Avenue.
That's correct.
So you cross over Maplewood Avenue and there's still 20 or 30 feet and you're just slivering, you're touching that.
Very unusual.
So it kind of takes the preciousness away from the buffer when you have cars going by every second.
When, yeah, Maplewood's driving through it, so.
Not to mention the causeway collapsing, and all of that. Well, I just wanted to bring up the discussion before we got too heavily involved in one design. Okay, because I personally myself, I'm not going to comment on the design, but what frequently happens with us is you start off and then you say, well, this is what we want with the balconies, and then essentially at that point, we're frozen. We're nibbling at light fixtures and we want to have storefronts and things like that. And so I thought it would be better to get it out in the open now.
That's what this is formatted
So if you want to
for.
go on, that's fine. Well, you've still got the hotel and such.
Yes, and so that's kind of how we formatted this presentation, was to move through the hotel massing, which we deliberately did not discuss last time, and then any other sort of comments we want to go over, which we just did, I think, to some degree, on this 100-foot buffer influence, was, revisiting the residential or mixed-use piece. But I think we'd want to we would like to take that same tour, 360 tour around the hotel that we took around the other building last time. And just get your feedback on that. And then, we did have some design ideas, and then, I think, we really wanted to get an idea on the style that you would that you're envisioning. So, because that is, if we're really zeroing in on the final massing tonight, we want to be prepared. We don't want to guess at the next meeting. We want to be prepared. What are your expectations and your thoughts moving into that next phase? So, looking at 2.0, you have a view over the bridge, and you can see the hotel massing peeking out from the left. I think the colors help a little bit to, see how it's been broken up. Coming down Rains Ave, there it is next to the, next to 3S, and North Mill Pond view through between the two buildings to the North Mill Pond. You can see how if this is more of a subtractive carving kind of a look for the hotel. And we really haven't discussed whether or not we really want these two buildings to look the same. I'm leaning towards no, just because I think that would be a lot of the same building. It'd start to look like the Beaux-Arts in Washington DC or something.
We all hate that.
Just, so, moving on to 2.3, gives you a view between 3S and a little public space. And 2.4, continuing around, introduced a little bit more of two stronger vertical elements, and then carving away around them, I think has a nice effect to sort of modulate what's happening there. And you can see the base is solid from this view, with the exception of just the vehicular entrance, but the rest is solid. Close up on 2.5 of that happening.
Could I just ask a question?
Sure.
Vehicular entrance, this is a separate underground parking or first-story parking than the other building?
Yes,
Yeah.
this is a completely separate
Okay.
vehicular, yes. And again, we're right on North Mill Pond, so we're not really going down. 2.6, you can see we've introduced some screening elements between the green space park and that facade facing the water on both sides, where there is just that little bit of parking remaining on grade, so we've introduced some landscape screening. And then that is our massing for the hotel, and we would be moving on to the architectural design inspiration. So did we want to stop and talk about that? Or did we already talk about it?
So
Kind of talked about it.
I stand by what I said about mass at the very beginning, so I'll just start there. In terms of the shape of the mass of the hotel, to me, it reads as one very, very big block. And although I'm not an expert in architectural style, this style, this blockiness, the cubes, it reads brutal to me, without some of the very, very heavy elements that brutal sometimes brings. And I just wonder, Carla, is that what you were going for?
Well, at this point, we're using the volumes and just sort of applying color to be able to separate them. Do you know what I'm saying? Using color as opposed to changing materials, because it just looks patchworky. So I don't know if I'm being...
So it's a way to take the cube and break it up so that it doesn't appear to be such a big cube?
Yes.
Okay. So
In a way,
the fact
yeah.
that it still reads to me as a really big cube
Okay.
says that, nice try, but it's still a really big cube. And so my question is, does it have to be this big a cube? Is there some way to reorganize the cube so that you get the cubage you want without it looking like a big cube? That's a rhetorical question. Or
Right,
one that
right,
doesn't
right.
have to be answered right here.
Right.
Okay.
Right. In terms of massing, yes.
Reagan?
I agree a lot of this. However, I think the taller massing pushed against Rains Avenue side is better for the street framing. However, it really, because you haven't really, I mean, I see what you're trying, I see what you're saying before with colors and trying to break it up so it's not one big white mass, because we obviously
Right.
don't like
Right, if you recall
marshmallows.
from our
But,
last,
right, but, and so it's not necessarily the style that you're proposing, it's just breaking up separate
pushing,
sections.
pulling, kind of eroding.
I'd love to see a little bit of a pull somehow to pull it down towards 3S. I mean, at this point, looking at 2.3, it really just makes 3S just tiny and squat. And so, like what you did with the hotel on the other side, where it steps down towards the small building. If there's any way, and maybe it needs to be a covered something on the first floor to just make it step down a little bit so that it's not a very, very tall wall next to a tiny building.
Some sort of mitigating factor.
Yeah, yeah. And then, again, I understand that we're not in the buffer, you're not up against the water, so we're not looking for a tiny building against the water. However, that one spot that sticks out, I mean, looking at 2.5, that sticks out and faces the back there, I feel like even if you could erode that little corner away, even just the one bay or something to make balconies on the front or something, so that you get the idea of it stepping down a little bit, I think will help with just that feeling of really tall, boxy building there.
Right, it is stepping on that as it
It is
faces.
stepping
Yeah,
there, but
we
even
did
just,
lose a story
even
there,
just like
so.
that, one more little step might help.
Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've no desire to be negative. I don't want to be abusive. I don't. Just, this is hard for me to look at. If I had a client that was paying me to build a building the size of this thing, I'd want them to be absolutely proud of it, absolutely proud of every damn brick and nail in it. And I wouldn't do anything to mask its magnificence at all. The idea of, and I know you're just doing colors to try to start that theme, but the point is, why that theme? Why are we not just exuberant about this building? Why does this building, who would want to live in something that looks like this? I've got a tiny little hovel at the end of Gate Street, and I love it. I don't want to do anything to mask any of it. I just don't see the point. And I'm struggling. I got it.
carving
I really do. I've got it. I'm struggling. It's my own struggle, but I can't help but say this. I'm here. This is my opportunity. We have a little cottage hospital that was built and then improved, enlarged. But both times, they built a thing with dependencies. It's a style, been repeated many times in Portsmouth. This public housing, it's the only time anybody built like anything like this in Portsmouth. I mean, there's a monster of a building on what, State Street, that the Rockingham Hotel.
Certainly,
It's a monstrosity, but it's got balance, and it's got pieces and parts of it that are reflective of pieces and parts of our community. It has more than one doorway. It's got a big one. Just to make sure that no one missed it, they put lions there. I got it. The metaphor isn't lost on me. But they were proud of that entire thing. Christ, he had his own effing face put on the building. He was that proud of it. This right here, this is like putting a garbage bag over someone's head. Those are my comments. I'm sorry, okay? I started out with a Paul. I'm not trying to be abusive. It just,
Well, if you look at 3.2 on the upper left, I mean, that is, you know, a way of doing that sort of carving. And I've heard early on in the meeting that that was not what you're favoring. So, you know, that's kind of what we were talking about for.
there's got to be another tool.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's the same sort of carving away of the cube and sort of eroding that you are beginning to see in this massing treatment. But if that's not your, you know, the direction that we've heard, that's why the 3 series is here. If that's gotten a don't go in that direction, then I think, you know, that's a good message. You know, we're in massing. So,
Thank you very much.
yeah, no worries.
But the style, we've also, you know, we've started discussion of the style on the Maplewood Avenue building.
Yes.
so.
Right.
Okay, anybody else want to?
Yeah.
Go ahead, no, please.
Okay.
What troubles me mostly is that our sense of aesthetics and balance has totally eroded. That's the way it seems to me. First of all, an adjective like beautiful, I couldn't apply to any of these proposals, nor to many of the buildings that we have built in the past and that actually were approved by the HDC.
What do you think about these photos, Heinz? Any of those?
No, it doesn't speak to me. I mean, it's just like, you know, I find it everywhere, and there's nothing lasting about it. It's a statement of what methodologies and new construction methods are capable of doing, and builders and companies will take advantage of that. But that doesn't really have anything to do with aesthetics. So what they're even contorting. Some people might say, this is Bauhaus. Bauhaus introduced us to this venue. The Bauhaus didn't introduce us to this venue. Methods of constructions, new discoveries of materials, plastics, et cetera, all of that contributes to this. And we take advantage of that to get the most economic benefit out of a building per square foot, irrespective of how people feel about it. It's driven simply by the balance sheet. That's what I object to. The Rockingham, on State Street, wasn't produced by a balance sheet. There was something more to it. And I don't see any of that quote-unquote more in what we're proposing here.
Or in any of our possible
Yeah,
styles.
no, it's just, it's all,
Not in the style
it's
photos.
crap.
Yeah,
Heinz,
We have, we have varying opinions.
you want,
I see that.
Martin,
wait, John, does it,
Yes.
it probably makes sense, for me at least it would. Heinz, can you clarify that all 16 images are crap versus,
Well, I think that,
Point one.
well, I'm necessarily talking about what is shown on pages historically speaking.
I didn't think you did, but she's asking you, are there any of the 16 that you would find more
are there
suitable?
3
Right.
Well, I
because the
think now,
building is just
now I'm
massive.
getting into sort of a grading kind of contest in terms of, oh, this might be a 7.2, and maybe this is a 7.6. It doesn't speak to me.
Right, well, we're, right.
we understand, I really do. Martin?
I think just to help summarize, I've heard some very good comments here and passion about this. And I think we would like to see, or some of the consensus here, is a more formal architecture.
Formal
It can be
organization.
modern,
Yep.
but we like a formality to it. Right now, we're just seeing a
In
box
both
with a
buildings.
couple of layers stuck on it to
Yep.
sort of give it some articulation. Also, the first floor, the way it meets the ground, I think that'll be really important in how it relates to 3S. Because right now, I'm not sure, are those storefronts, or are they garage doors, or are they, what am I looking at?
Which elevation are you looking at?
Let's say 2.3. Because right now, they're very alien looking.
Hang on, I'm not there yet.
Could be a gymnasium that is going to be.
2.3, that's
covered, the windows
the
will be
lobby, the hotel lobby area.
Okay, maybe something that brings it down and gives you more of a porch in that area, of more of a human scale. Just, so I think we're looking
Not this
for
straight
a base, a middle, and a top, and some formalities, and less abstraction.
Okay,
Am I wrong?
No, that's a good way of saying base, middle, and top is very basic, isn't it?
less abstract.
So I would just like to say, and this goes back to a year ago, when this was first brought up, that in my opinion, this is the most valuable site in Portsmouth. This land, overlooking the water, overlooking the mill pond. You're just so incredibly lucky to even be working on this. And I just really think that these buildings should be a legacy building for our builder, for the hotel company, and for yourself. So that this is something that you'll put on your wall and say, well, I designed this. And we've said that before, and I think other buildings that we've said it about has worked. So that's my opinion, and I think that we might be looking for comments from the public, and then we're just going to move on.
I just want to give Evan a chance to speak if he has anything else to say, or are you all set?
Certainly you could, yeah, Evan?
No, I think we appreciate the feedback, and that was our goal tonight, was to discuss this hotel building and also some of the, the inspirational or, potentially inspirational images, get your feedback so that we can, go back to the buildings and really look at how we can better organize them and detail them, with the acknowledgement that, the massing is more or less there, or we have some comments from tonight of how we might need to adjust it adjacent to 3S and looking towards the mill pond on the hotel building.
And just dig into the style now.
Thank you. So is anyone in the public, would you like to speak? And don't forget to introduce yourself.
I've got papers to read in the bathroom when
No, thank
you're
you.
bored.
Thanks a lot.
I think there's a I think there's enough for everybody, if you'd like to take one and pass it.
Need one for Nick.
I wanted to make sure you got mine.
Yes, we did.
Okay, because there was computer issues. Sorry.
There was.
Well, you guys are all too close now. Elizabeth Bratter, good evening. Elizabeth Bratter, property owner of 159 McDonough Street. The massing of the mixed-use building was mentioned briefly at the December 1st meeting, but not resolved.
Thanks, John.
And some style recommendations were made. The mixed-use building is the first building that is seen passing many historic buildings on Maplewood Ave. Some of the Maplewood at stepping could come around the corner on the waterfront side. The mixed-use building will sit high on this property because it has a 12-foot grade, which will raise it up to 72 feet, compared to the 20 to 40 feet existing on the other buildings. Based on the fact that the AC Hotel, 145 Maplewood, and even 53 Green Street all step down to 2 or 3 stories, it would be a rational conclusion that the same would be encouraged for this lot, which you obviously did. The style presented has nothing to do with the historic North End, much less its shipbuilding, Irish, and Italian history. The presented improvements to the mixed-use building still look very sterile. The awnings that were added to the top are very nice. The awning added in the back is plain and straight and black. The houses that existed on the north end had, please excuse me because I don't do architecture, so this is all stolen off the net. Cornices with decorative scrolls and finials, Tuscan columns, and vertical decorative boards. Let's talk about the massing of the hotel. It does not seem to follow HDC guidelines at all. The lot is surrounded by a pond, a ground-level city park, a 1.5-story art space at the bottom of a hill, and this 5-story hotel should step down to 3 stories where it is parallel to the 3 stories on 145 Maplewood, and gradually lower to 2 stories as it passes 3S art space and moves around the corner to the abutting city park. That would really be in the neighborhood context. On this part of the north end, all of the larger structures step down to 3S art space and to the waterfront, including 53 Green Strip, which steps down to 2 stories and gradually steps upward away from the water. Nobles Islands has 2-story structures, Maplewood Ave has its historic buildings, and across the pond there are 2-story homes in the context of the neighborhood per the HDC guidelines. The architectural style currently presented seems like a colored box. When you look at Plan 4.0, the buildings are 70s modern, which could work in some parts of Portsmouth. They should not be presented as in a significant historical district, where the decor on the facades should include historical elements and siding, which complement the historic characteristic of the location. This area was known for shipbuilding, a mill, and some whiskey making, all involving wood. The added wood dividers between the upper decks on the mixed-use building look very nice, and that wood motif could be brought down to the lower levels in the form of some awnings over the windows or decorative molding or even rain caps. The doorways could have columns or even dock pilings or vertical planks on the sides. And there could be awnings over the doors that could be supported with decorative wood or some of the I don't know what they're called, but if you drive around Portsmouth, a lot of people have over their houses, they have these things that kind of lean up against the thing that goes over the front door. But those type of things would be nice. You could have that with a modern architecture and then have those things underneath it. Some of the modern buildings on Plan 3.2 show modern siding, but some of it looks similar to wood, and it would give that modern feel without taking away from the historical context. So you could have modern with the old. The tacky Parade Mall replacement of the historical homes in the North End and the HDC formed to encourage historically favorable development. No more mall styles, please, in the architecture. More in these significantly historical areas. Thank you very much for your time,
Elizabeth.
and I think you guys did a great job having those elements brought up.
Who else would like to speak? Could we keep this brief if possible?
Yeah, this will be pretty brief. My name is Peter Whale, and I live at 100 Gate Street. Just a couple comments. I mean, when you look at this site, this is one of the most historic sites in Portsmouth. The ancient Boyd's Rain House was on this property. There was over 75 clipper ships that were built on the North Mill Pond there. And across from that is actually the Jackson House that was built in 1664. It's the oldest wood structure in Portsmouth. So just a comment on massing. I think these boxes are just boxes. It's like any other architecture anywhere in the USA. And I think a lot more work could be done to step these down so you have 2-story or 2.5-story buildings along that mill pond. I think we've got to be respectful of the history here in Portsmouth. And that site in Portsmouth is one of the most historic sites in this town. I mean, ships were launched that went all over the world from that one site. So I think there's a lot more work that could be done. I voted against this on the planning board when I was on it in the last term. And my reason was that this hadn't even gotten in front of the HTC with massing. And here we are at the planning board approving a project that we didn't even know what the hotel was going to look like. So I think a lot of work has to be done, and I appreciate all your hard work and dedication to doing this. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Esther Kennedy, 41 Pickering Ave. First of all, I want to thank you for the discussion. I thought it was a great discussion to hear and listen to. You know, I heard you say that stepping down to the water, and I think you need to look at the whole area as one big project. And I think this building needs to step down to the water. Hence the reason it needs to be two stories. And then you'll have the visual, I think, that I heard so much of you speak of tonight. I just want to remind you all that the first thing people see coming to Portsmouth is going to be this building. The last thing people see leaving Portsmouth is going to be this building. So it's a historical area. We've heard from everyone that, you know it, but let's think about the step up and make this building the step up into the north end. Thank you.
All right, thank you. A familiar looking face.
Thank you. Paige Trace, 27 Hancock Street. I wanted to take 1 second to speak out of turn regarding the artwork, because I sat on this board when the decision was made about that. I know that there's not one of you here that would have made that decision based on anything remotely having to do with race, and I find it ugly that this town has gone to that point where any one of us as residents would bring up that issue. So I have your backs, and I don't often agree with Mr. Ryan, but tonight, God bless you, you said it, and you said it eloquently, so I thank you, sir, for having my back when I'm not sitting with you anymore. So thank you. As to this, I would suggest at some point that you go back to the pro-con slide of 2.0, because oddly enough, 2.0, when you zoom in on it, the hotel building has 5 windows in a row, not 4. So either there's a problem there. If you look next to the car, the little tiny car. Anyway, neither here nor there. I realize that what we have is a collision course with dollars and cents and the last historic part of Portsmouth. And please, I ask you to hold your line on the massing, because it's too much, too big, and not very appropriate right next to the North Mill Pond. And I don't think Mr. Boyd would have liked it to think that his home no longer exists. And that's the idea that we have for Portsmouth. But anyway, I know that you'll all do your job, and I can't thank you enough. And good luck. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for your 2 years. Yeah. I think Mr. Boyd would be upset that his house was torn down and a gas station was put there originally. So that's it. I think you've heard a lot of opinions,
It's
and
been very helpful. Thank
yeah,
you.
I think the word maybe formality with Mr. Ryan came up with.
I think we've successfully framed our next step, so that was the purpose here for tonight.
So we'll see you another time.
Yes,
Next
in
month or
a
March.
couple of more sessions from now.
Nope, hang on, John, there might be a hand,
Excuse me?
one sec, there might be a hand raised here.
Oh.
Let me
What?
check.
There
Let me
might-
make sure there's nobody else that wants to speak.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
You haven't got your full amount of thrashing yet.
Yeah, so Bill Downey has his hand up. If you can let Bill in, Kevin.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Nick, good save. I was afraid you forgot us here.
I did.
I'm very heartened tonight, by the way, Bill Downey, 67 Bow Street, to hear the reference to the charrette, which was, I think, 14 and 15, and just the tremendous amount of investment the citizens put towards that and the empowerment. And I was glad, Reagan, you had mentioned that. And also, Margot, I think I agree, this is just too big. It has no definition. It reminds me of a dormitory. It looks a lot like Durham, some of those real boxes there. And I just think that we need to have a higher scale of definition, of integrity. And I think it's a disservice to present this and one of the last opportunities to really tie this together. And to the neighbors across the street, those beautiful historic homes are just getting dwarfed. So again, I really appreciate some of your comments tonight and heartened. And I hope you can hold the line on this because this is a significant property. We all know that. And we have a tremendous opportunity to engage the citizens on this property and really make it a gateway property that engages citizens. And it's not just public benefit or amenities for the tenants. So thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. So that's it?
That's it?
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. Try to get back to where we were.
Agenda.
2 Russell Street?
You gotta read out you gotta read the agenda though.
I haven't gotten there yet. Okay. I'm sorry. We just did, right? So this looks like work session C. Does that sound right, Nick?
Yes?
Yeah. Requested by Port Harbor Land LLC owner for property located at 2 Russell Street and 0 Deer Street, 2 lots, wherein permission is requested to allow the construction of a new freestanding structure, 3 to 5-story mixed-use building, as per plans on file in the planning department. Said properties are shown on Assessor Map 124 as Lot 12, Map 118 as Lot 28, and Map 125 as Lot 21, and lie within the Character District 5 Downtown Overlay Historic District. Who's here to present this work session?
Hi, Brooks Slocum with SGA.
Ryan Plummer with 2 International Group.
Certainly. All righty.
So, should we start in?
Yeah, certainly.
We've been in front of you, I think, twice before. We're kind of doing a reset of the second meeting to some degree because we had some massing adjustments due to some of your code requirements and some other things that we needed to clean up.
Always something.
It's always something to get right during working sessions. At least I love doing things before we start building. We did. I think most of you have all been through this. You know where the site is. It's on Deer Street, Russell Street, Green Street, Maplewood, and the train tracks next to the Sheraton. if we go to the massing page, I think it's 6, the one thing that we want to kind of identify that's different is we've separated all 3 buildings entirely, meaning that the connections aren't underground, there's no garage that follows the whole thing. It does a couple of things. It allows the average grade plane to be a little bit different on the buildings on the side versus the ones in the center, which means we'll be able to play, I think, a little bit more with height of these buildings, which is something that, I gotta pull this down a little because I'm fogging up. I
Sorry,
can't see it.
are these pages marked?
Sorry,
Sure,
yes, in the
pages.
corner.
Yeah,
Bottom right.
They're small.
That little blue thing
Page
is-
6.
is hiding it.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
We try and make it hard
I know,
in this
on
work
our
session.
iPads, the little, we have a little blue thing that is
Oh.
hiding the paper.
The one with all the 6 diagrams. What we, in regards to doing that, we also did a bit of a program shift from the condo being on the finger to the condo being in the middle.
Okay.
That was one of the other shifts. And then in the center building used to face towards the downtown, and now it faces out towards the mill pond. There's a couple of reasons for that, and it works a little bit better programmatically. It also opens up that centerpiece to the view down across the tracks, and it allows a little bit more of a street presence, which is something that we know is part of the requirements here, which we were kind of not necessarily following. By having this ability to play with these masses, we're thinking that they become more of, especially these larger masses, and I know that it's been tried on some of the Port Walk Place building facades, and we're going to try and craft it a little bit more like you're describing and not make it just an applique. But the intent here is to create another part of the town that's like your Market Street area, the Main Street with the church, and every one of those buildings is right next to each other, as you know, the precedent images will look like. But in essence, this is the modification. This is where we're kind of resetting back to. We had some length issues with the finger building, which is why we had to shrink it, because you have a 225-foot limit, and we were beyond that. So that's one of the reasons this got chopped and moved over a little bit. We had to kind of play that. I take full responsibility. But we do want to look at this as a series of buildings that are part of the natural fabric of Portsmouth. Again, we're just as tall as some of these other buildings that you're talking about, where we're trying to make it feel like it's part of the rhythm of the town. And I know that one of the comments that we left with last time was it's a very dicey road to walk down, and we're going to obviously have to come back in a month and show you what we think we're going to be doing with these 7 or 8 buildings. They're really just 3, but we want to try and get it right and have enough for the developer to make it worthwhile.
Can I just say thank you for doing this, because we seem to always be inundated with one giant building because it's one giant parcel, so, and this is
We're trying to make it feel like it was.
contextual, and I just appreciate that, so thank you.
There's a big thank you right on it, too, at the end of the presentation.
Yeah,
I like
we-
that.
Yeah.
Let's see if
Starting right off.
Let's see if I can get to the next page. I'm kind of losing it on my, it's too big of a thing for my little phone. But anyway, this is easier. So this is basically this is where we were going. The office building still on Maplewood. We may play with that alley. What I've noticed, I don't know why it's not coming up, but that alley that comes up, which is Portsmouth Place or whatever it is.
Port Walk Place.
Port Walk Place. When I walk it, and part of it's a street, part of it's a walkway, part of it's a street. Now we're going to create a walkway. We have a stair at the end, which I think is something you guys had asked for. How you go across the tracks is none of our business, but the idea is that might be there. And we may crank that a little bit to let that curve of Port Walk Place kind of continue on and be part of that same circular rhythm. In the next presentation, we'll show how that photograph evolves down that piece. But this is another one of those walkway pieces. We did get some comments last week from the planning board that these aren't great public spaces, and we're sensitive to that. But in reality, I walked through the town the following day, and you have plenty of small, narrow side area places. Maybe they're not as narrow. We're going to try and play with that. But there are little parks here that have become a very good place. And if we are going to be creating a pathway, this is kind of another avenue in which to move through the town. That's the intent here. You know, we're also benefited by this huge corner, which I think the planning board was in support of to some degree, that could make that whole corner feel like a really nice gathering space. And maybe by not having it in the site and on the edge of the site might be a very helpful piece. Let's see, we're going to have, unfortunately, there's requirements for parking, which we can't really see on the next sheet. And that's forcing us to have 2 layers of parking in this one, but we're only putting it in one building. One that you drive in from the railroad track side, and the other one that you come across the street from the Sheraton and into a parking area. We're putting the liner in, which will have potentially just amenities, and if we can get some retail up there, we will. But you know, the intent is to create a linear retail or public experience along the street edge, which I think is part of the requirements that you guys all have in your book, which I'm still learning about. And then, you know, the Finger building will become a smaller rental building, ground floor, because it's not high enough off the street, will have to be retail of some sort. So that might be, Ryan and I were talking about, could be a good restaurant, something like that. You don't know yet. And then the office building is only 4 floors. So we'd be able to treat that facade slightly differently when we get to our kind of hacked up images. Remember, our sketches were just to kind of give a sense of, we're not there yet. That's
Very
the next
sketchy.
meeting. Very sketchy. We wanted to keep it super loose, but the intent here was to say, you currently have a series in the photos on page 10, which is, you know, you have an edge of the city, which is a bunch of buildings all the same in some respect, but when I walk that street, I know these are fairly new, some of these, they do create an edge of the city that's pretty impressive. To some degree, I think we can maybe do a little bit better on that one. This is the lower right, the Deve one, I think is a good example of some of the places we were trying to go with those sketches. But I do apologize for the sketchiness. We didn't want to commit too quickly until you guys responded. But we do think that, you know, the E is a good example of how a pathway could be. These are slightly smaller. But this kind of ability, now that we have some height to play with, because we've broken the buildings up, we might be able to have it feel like it's a bunch of buildings as opposed to one. Although it's, you know, it's always a challenge. You look at what is on Port Walk Place. There are some parts of that facade that do work and other parts that are, in my opinion, not as successful. Obviously, on the next page is some parks, some walkways where we're trying to kind of explain how we might treat it. We're going to, in the next meeting, put together some images that represent more clearly what we're trying to do in those areas and how those spaces are going to be treated, obviously, and then we're on to the sketches. But in this attempt, it's different colors of brick, not too far apart from each other, a kind of a datum line. I don't want it to always be the same. We want to kind of keep that rhythm, but there are some pieces which will carry through. We want it to treat so that when you look down the street, it looks like 6 buildings, but in reality, it's really just going to be 2, or in this scenario. I'm not really resolved on 13 yet. I think that needs a fair amount of work still. That Finger building is probably the most challenging, and that's one that
we have, you know, other projects have had trouble with that too, and having octagon tower, so to speak, on the end of the building.
It seems to, the spot seems to cry, do something exciting here.
It does.
But it's humbling when you actually have to show other people what you think of as exciting.
Yeah, this one I don't want to focus on because it's not a great shot yet, but it is a challenging, but it, you know, it's got that cool old rock that has the, you know, the mile marker, so there is some historical element to it.
You know, from Uncle Dave here, just saying that I don't think you have to do all that much there. It's exciting spot.
It is very exciting.
To come out of that corner and see the end of this building. It could look like.
Just has to be designed well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not chopped liver, but something. I don't think it takes Disney to interpret this into something that's exciting.
I agree.
It's our flat iron.
Yeah,
Yeah, there
it's
you
your
go.
flat iron, and it's
Yeah,
gotta be,
that's it.
it's gotta be done well. Our image here doesn't represent how well we think
No,
it
that's
can
right.
be, and I wanna just say, I apologize.
Did we jump ahead to this, by the way?
Sorry, did I do that?
Yeah, I
We're
think
all jumping here.
Sorry, I don't mean to be a jumper.
12 is,
But I wanted to get through to here, to just say thank you. No, there we are. So there we are.
Well, I think,
Okay.
if I may be
Yeah,
so bold
sorry.
to add a footnote to this, I think the reason we're already speaking about those issues is that we are pleasantly surprised at what you have proffered tonight.
Excellent. All Brian's doing.
that's pretty rare. That's like a thank you.
This is the second most important site in Portsmouth that's up for development. And we think it's a critical element to create an edge between the old city and this evolving new city with items that you're dealing with every day. And somehow you guys have thankfully pushed us through to make sure that both of these are view corridors, not just dead-end view corridors, which I tried to sell. But anyway, one has still got a little bit of a road in it, but I think in the end, these are the first major moves as these diagrams on page 6 identify. How we get beyond, on the diagram, on the lower diagrams and really work it through is something that I think is the craft that you were describing on the earlier project. It's the critical element to make design, architecture, weave the two things together, especially, with the scale of the hill and everything else. So that's where we're at. I think,
What's
hopefully.
the
we
road behind it? What is that just for parking or is that?
That's a fire access road and access to the parking
Okay.
as well.
It works well for hiding the big parking entrances.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's quite a grade difference, isn't there? from-
There's about a 10 to 15, depending upon how we do it. It seems as though we'll be able to set the average grade at 24, and the back road is around 14, so it's about 10 feet, I'd say, in the end. How we play it, and that way, all of the parking on the first level is buried in that building,
Which building?
the center building.
The center building. Thank you. I didn't
So
understand.
that building got a little bit bigger than the one you had seen earlier, and it now has a little bit more parking in it, but there's no more parking on the site, which accommodates the needs of the Sheraton as well as the needs of this particular project.
Oh, really?
So, if we can reduce it based on how you guys see it, we'd love to, right?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is that we were able to completely separate the two buildings that we had previously over one parking structure, which worked with zoning. But as we started to look at the length of the building on Russell, because there were some comments about how we were going to break that up, we actually did some provisions and we weren't really happy with them necessarily. And we realized that we could solve a few issues at the same time. In the process of shortening that building and moving the massing, we were able to just completely separate the buildings and put a second floor of parking behind a liner space, and that will allow us to fit all of the parking under that one building and actually have 3 separate structures now. So,
And that helps with construction, it helps with fire, and it helps with, as I say, from my perspective, it's grade plane.
I'm interested in the liner space. Is this a shallow retail? Is this something that could actually accept small shops?
yeah, that's what,
Could
over
definitely,
20
it's,
feet
yeah,
deep,
it's,
right?
yeah, if I had
Because
it.
so many of the developments, the retail spaces all end up being 4,000 or 5,000 square feet, and they sit there vacant, waiting for somebody
Yeah.
to come along.
I mean, that is a challenge with any of these spots. I mean, it's a 200, it's like 300 linear feet at about 25 to 30 feet deep. I think, we're 30 feet deep. We have, it's a 30-foot deep space, but it's long. If we can manipulate it in different ways, we will. But, the problem is we have the parking, if there's movement in the parking, we can. We were chatting that maybe there's a little bit more room for some stackers on this level. If that happens, then maybe we can make it a little bit larger. But you don't want to end up with empty space, as you say.
No.
How much amenity.
It sounds like the bigger issue is like the larger footprints of some of the spaces, and because these spaces aren't too deep, I do think that they're very suitable to potentially be chopped up into smaller retail suites and maybe
It
easier to
might,
lease and create
maybe
activity.
small is a better idea.
Right.
Reagan?
No, that's what I think that there's a lack of that, and the little spaces downtown are the ones that are filled. And, I think when you put more housing here, there are more people who need more amenities, like a little coffee shop or a little newspaper store or something like that, that is gonna get lost in a huge thing. So I think it's a great idea.
Shoe repair.
Shoe repair. Where are all the
I
cobblers?
send mine out.
Margot.
Yes, couple of questions.
Sure.
So make sure I understand what you've drawn here. So, page 7, the little park that's in the center building,
Yes.
is that on top of the parking?
That's on
structure?
top of the parking
Okay.
for the residents. So it's
Great.
like an amenity deck.
Okay, so it's not open to the public?
No.
Okay. The little alleyway,
Is.
however, is.
Yes.
Okay. And on top of the parking entry that's between the funky building and the big building, that is also just a roof?
No, that's the roof, but it's at grade level.
So do you anticipate people are crossing over to the railroad tracks, or are they using it to get into the other buildings?
Grade level at this point is above, 10 feet above the the railroad tracks.
Okay, so people would walk into that space to go into either one of the buildings?
They could, or they,
It's parking.
it's parking as well. We're in the midst of trying to resolve
Oh,
exactly
this is the,
how that
okay,
gets used.
this is the driveway.
That's the
Okay,
driveway.
okay, thank you.
So
It'll-
there's two separate entrances to
Should
the
have a
parking.
mailbox.
There's one on the back side of the building to the lower parking, and then there's the second floor parking with the liner that's coming in off of Russell Street. And that actually helped us in a number of ways because we don't need the ramps now, so we were able to make more efficient use of the square footage. And it also makes it better from a traffic standpoint because there's some shared parking between the Sheraton and this site. So when valets go across, they don't have to go all the way down Deer through Maplewood and then back around the building, which is just creating extra traffic that isn't necessary.
So it's like the
So-
two-level entrances on the
It's two
in the
different level
in the Hanover
entrances, exactly.
parking garage right now, you get on Fleet Street and you're down here, or you're on Hanover and you're,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're part of this site, more likely you'll be at the lower level parking. If you're at the hotel or, I'm not sure how they end up using it, it'll be mostly valet, so it will be more controlled. This will be paved and treated in a similar manner as the plaza. It's just that it'll have cars passing on it. We do, as you can see, we have a site stair on the one coming up
Yes.
God damn it. Fort Walk Place. There is also, it is an opportunity, if need be, we could put another one on the end of this one too, and just give you guys the full flow through there. That, again, is something we need to iron out, but it is possible there, because all we're creating on there is a 10-foot wall towards the train tracks that we could kind of do something cool with some stairs. But, you have to just be mindful of the traffic, so that would be the challenge.
I did want to thank you for reading the book, because we made it for a reason, so I appreciate that. I like that you noticed that
I'm still reading it.
some of the,
This long.
some of the success of downtown Portsmouth, the oldest section downtown Portsmouth, is because all the buildings are so different, and it's the mishmash that makes the whole much better than the parts, because
Different but the same.
there are some buildings, honestly, on Congress Street, that are cement blocks, but they create a rhythm with the grand one next to it and the less grand one to the left of that,
Exactly.
and it makes this wonderful mix. So I'm glad that that's something that you've noticed. And with regard to the funky building at the end, I would just, David and I were laughing here because I pulled up very quickly the images of the two Flatiron buildings one in New York and one in Boston.
Yeah.
And it's really just the fact that they're triangles that
Yeah.
just, make them so wonderful. And the rest is just repeating windows and some nice flair
There's a
and
small
some
one in
nice
Portland
trims.
also, believe it.
Is there?
I mean, you go to Paris, it's everywhere, because when he said, I want a road this way, you had a million of them. So we actually I have a whole file of that type of building when we were doing the early studies. I think we'll investigate that because, we've struggled with it. The one thing I like is that this is now a smaller building, because it was too long before, and we were trying to make it longer because of the condos, and that's the more value piece. But in reality, there's incredible views going the other way, which is why the condo now makes more sense looking out over the water, the
Yep.
cemetery, and the mill pond.
Thank you very much for I appreciate the steps and the process and how you're involving us with your development, literally development of this as it goes along. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it too, yeah.
Ryan, David?
Just to jump in, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you did a great job, a great service to the project by thinking your way through breaking the pieces up. Yeah, I don't have to caution you on how making whimsy it can fall hard on its face. And I'm glad it's not my job to do that. I inherit whimsy. I don't have to
We
make
didn't
it.
do it yet.
Well, yeah, but you're suggesting that you're going to. You certainly.
Oh, we're definitely.
I mean, all of these squiggly damn lines mean something. I think there's a great opportunity for you, and if you follow in this direction, you're going to have a winner. The only thing that's puzzling me is why you're doing so much to make the Port Walk seem like it fits in.
The Port Walk is an amazing pedestrian connection, if it's done right, to connect people through the city. I've spent a bunch of time watching people walk across the site, the tracks, and go through into the city as a pedestrian piece. As these other pieces get more developed, you have a couple more big buildings that are going to happen to the north of this. That part of the city is a very important one. This is an amazing element, and you walk around any part of the city, there are some big mistakes, like the parking garage, and then there are some really successful pieces, like, what is it, Chestnut, then Boardwalk Place, or Port Walk Place. And this is one of those elements we can't hide from, because I think it's going to tie your city together in a way that you really, you all are trying to make happen.
Yeah.
And it's our responsibility, and
It
it
was
also.
always a discussion that we had too, because the reality is, you start looking up by the music hall, or actually by the Abraham Shaw House, and going across the street to the Black Cemetery. Coming over and going past the music hall, and you get into the Vaughn Mall, and you cross the street directly, you're on Port Walk Place, you walk across that. So that's why this is making a lot of sense, and I want to thank you for this.
Yeah, we want to make it a better, we want to make Port, there's, the family is obviously much more in tune with ports than I am, but, it's an important element. I think you guys said some great things just on the last panel, which was you want to be able to have a building or a set of buildings that really you're proud of as the city gets older and more mature. I mean, it can't get much older in this city, but the new part of the city, this north part, gets older and more mature. It's got to feel like it's always.
We have another comment here, Martin.
I would just simply say, following up from the previous applicant, this is how you get a formal modernism with a base, a middle, and a top. And I applaud that. I think that's a good direction. I'm liking some of your imagery.
A little squiggly.
Page 10's a little weird, but 11, good imagery and.
Wait till next week. Next month we'll have real pictures that
Very
you
good.
should be happy with. I think we owe you some real character.
Yeah.
It just looks like a little bit too much coffee in the morning, and
This particular draft individual was, I think, at 2 a.m, so yeah, it was a little early, or late, depending on how we work. But
Okay.
we wanted to at least get some indication of color and presence. There's some really beautiful 100-year-old examples of some of these buildings that have a very modern feel for 100 years ago. That might be the right transition for this town at this point. So that's where we're kind of moving. Modern buildings, but 100 years old.
do we have any other where to go on this, or should we, I'll ask the public if anyone wants to make comments, and,
We have some public here.
okay? Sounds like a movie.
Good evening, Elizabeth Bratter, 159 McDonough Street property owner. Most of this you guys can sleep through because most of it is really for them, but I'm going to go ahead and start. The way the massing is presented, it seems very helpful to envision how this development will fit into the corner. Well, I needed to tell you one more thing. I looked at this once, and then the computers went down. and I haven't looked at it since, though if there's anything wrong, it's because I couldn't remember it all. It was interesting to notice that there were no pictures of Maplewood Ave heading north, coming down Maplewood Ave from Route 1. The abutters will be 111 Maplewood Ave, which is a one-story building, and with a large parking lot, and 233 Vaughn Street, which is a four-story building. Both will be directly across the railroad tracks from this development. The presented community space sets the condos back from the railroad tracks. These buildings are parallel to 233 Vaughn Street and potentially any new development at 111 Maplewood. The developer may want to consider the amount of reflective noise that will happen once the tunnel is created by the two structures. Creating better setbacks from the railroad tracks and designing the buildings accordingly could make them more marketable. This could be accomplished by creating a community space along the railroad tracks. You already have a road, instead of a large one in the middle of the three lots. The community space in this area should be tactfully fenced to deter people to access the tracks. The two buildings, which will likely have the best views of the North Mill Pond, is the commercial space building shown in the front, and of the Piscataqua River is the rental space building, which is presented in the back. They're not shown as waterfront condos. Having the commercial spaces closer to the railroad tracks on the bottom and the first floors would be more prudent than stacking the rentals, the condos, and the commercial space from the ground floor upward. Stepping the railroad track side could help with the noise or provide various views by doing more an accordion type stepping, so it's not upward, but going back from it. The railroad tracks at this point are even to the structures, and that is a lot different than sitting below them or above them when the whistle blows. I lived next to the railroad tracks for 35 years. I own property that's in Dover that's probably 200 feet from the railroad tracks where the whistle blows. I have a good idea of how loud that is. It's hard to tell if the view corridors line up to Portwork, that's been clarified, or the hill, which I thought would be a nice touch to potentially give a nice view for both sides. So it looks like the second one, looking at your pictures, the first one lines up to Portwork. I thought that was great. But the hill is not the other one, it's the Sheridan, and it would be nice if you could line it up to the hill. The end of the commercial building on the corner of Maplewood and Russell could emulate the three other buildings one is proposed, but they're kind of rounded and they sit back from the road to allow for good sight lines at a difficult intersection. That intersection doesn't line up, and it is going to have a big sidewalk out front, but you might want to pay attention that the other buildings are rounded there. The developer should consider that there is currently very little to no parking available in the north end. Based on the number of parking conditional use permits that have been issued in the last few years, there will be a parking disaster in this part of Portsmouth by the time these structures are built. Even though parking is not required for commercial units, it should be considered that without any public parking available, the likelihood of renting units may be very low. There is no parking shown other than under the condo building. Perhaps consideration should be given to adding some in the building on the corner of Russell and Maplewood. Parking is always underestimated by cities and always given a lot of parking CUPs. But parking can provide a very large income base if it's managed properly. Thank you for your time.
All right.
John, there's one
Yes.
there's one speaker, Jerry Zellen, who I'd ask Kevin let in to speak.
Certainly.
Jerry, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me adequately?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'll be very brief. I joined this meeting in the toward the end of the work session, and that's because when I looked at the agenda for the meeting several days ago, a work session for this project was not listed, though I did see that the meeting packet included drawings for this. And now, when I went on to the city website tonight, I see that the work session is listed. So I'm joining this meeting having just come home from work. And I'm not going to comment on the facade details because I haven't had a chance to look at them closely enough. But I just want to say that I once again applaud the developer, but now more than I've ever done that, because the massing of this building is exactly what the opponents of Harbor Corp had recommended and what Harbor Corp's developers had refused to do. And so I think it's great that we have these two true cut-throughs where we have basically three separate towers. And I just want to indicate, in terms of massing, this project has not only my full support, but I'm sure if you ask the people who opposed Harbor Corp's project, this project, as shown in terms of massing, would have their complete support as well. And so I really want to thank the architects and their clients for their sensitivity to what is really a proper massing for this project.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah, thank you.
That was very good.
Quit while you're ahead.
So I don't see anyone else, and I'd just like to say, you you come back next month,
Looking
and
forward to it. We'd like to. We'd
pay a
like
little
to.
more attention to your squiggles.
Are you going to come back next month? Because we need a
Yeah.
vote to do so.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. The reason we didn't have the additional facade work done that we talked about last time was mainly because we wanted to make sure we were okay with the massing changes. We didn't expect those after the last meeting, and then we realized we had a solution that would make the project better anyways, so.
Yeah, I was in Venice in October, and I thought, oh, that's the same thing that we could do, right? Same thing you guys have here, just a different character. Appreciate it. We look forward, you guys have the experience with this type of historical architecture. We're looking forward to hearing your feedback and trying to make sure that a modern interpretation is something that can be done, and I think we're on the right path, but the feedback in
Have
the
the
next
finger
meeting will be
building.
very helpful.
You have the finger building.
The figure bill, I'm gonna
Maybe
find a
that's-
good one for you guys.
Well, I thought you were calling that.
There is something sort of, from different towns have different feels in their old buildings. The module that's repeated down the street, the size of that lot, that it's one door, two windows, or whatever it is. Sometimes it's, in parts of Alexandria, it's like 22 feet. In Philadelphia, it's like 24 feet. But there's a module, and once you find that module that you can work with, that will help link the disparate pieces that you're going to try to make together, because as much as you want to make them different, you have
There has to be
to
a rhythm.
drive them
Yep.
together.
Yep. I agree with you.
Yes.
That and the modulation of the height.
Even with the occasional walkway from the street to the backyard.
And sometimes that big, long diagonal line.
Well, if you're a resident of the condo, if anybody's interested, they're obviously be able to come up and use the upper terrace. Even better.
Okay.
You might get invited.
Thank you very much.
Very
Yep,
much.
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Do we need to?
You need a
move-
motion and
I'll
to
move that
continue
we
that.
continue this work session to next month.
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Did we?
What's wrong?
Good job.
Yeah. Do we need a break?
Yeah, small bird.
I think a small break might be in order now. All right.
Have one more.
Oh, that gives me time to change my chair.
Is that bad?
Yeah, it's all right.
Oh, no.
project. Steve is here, and Michael Brown, who's the developer and builder, is here also. Yep. So, we are back following our last work session. We think that we got some really good feedback from the last session. So, we have gone ahead and developed these concepts a little bit more. We were able to put it into model form for you to take a look at, both renderings, and I believe there's a movie, 2 movies actually attached to the submission that sort of give us fly-arounds if we want to be able to work around the buildings. So from the last session, what's changed on sheet 1? I apologize. The reason that there's 2 elevations on here is we were supposed to be showing the cupola and non-cupola options, and a layer got turned off inadvertently, but we will be able to compare those later on. Later on in the set, we have some renderings that show both the cupola and the non-cupola options tied together.
Guessing this is the non-cupola.
This is the non-cupola option.
So,
Well, we made the cupola much smaller, as you had asked.
that's why I'm here. I got the detail thing going.
Yes. So on sheet 1, what we've changed is the front entrance. We've added a second side light, centered those with the transom and the door surround. We've changed the front stoop to show granite material on the stoop. Because of setbacks and gradings, we've actually turned the steps so that they, you come out the stoop and head towards the driveway rather than the street. And we're showing railings there. We've changed the material in the breezeway link to match the siding material of the 1-story garage lean-to. We were able to take a foot out of the height of the carriage house, which I think was an issue at the last meeting. Yep, we've added the chimney to the main house. We've put bigger windows in the attic gables. We've changed the mutton grill pattern from 2/2 to 6/1 and 8/1, depending upon the width of the window. On sheet 2, we actually note on here that we're now specifying wood clapboard siding versus the hardy plank. So we're not proposing the hardy plank anymore, although we are still proposing the PVC for the trims and the window surrounds. In the crawl space, we've added 2 windows to the right of this plan, and then we've mulled together the next 2 windows under the bay. We've carried the brick line towards that back addition, that back L, where that had been clapboards previously down to the ground. The biggest change we made here is that back L formerly had a gable end on it that was fairly high, and we've changed that to a hip roof, which we think brings the scale of that down quite nicely. On sheet 3, you'll see that hip roof versus the gable. That gave us the opportunity for a few more windows back there. Again, we've changed the attic window to be a larger window. We're showing the siding change at the breezeway. It continues in through there. On the garage carriage house, there was a door out to the backyard that was moved around. You don't see it in any of these elevations. It's actually tucked into that breezeway nook, because we've got a grade change there. We're able to get the stairs into the garage, and then that comes down and discharges directly out onto the patio there. So we've replaced that door location with a window location here. And on sheet 4, nothing much has changed really, other than the mutton patterns in the windows from the 2/2s to the 8/1s. We changed the door over the dining room door to the patio. It's on the far right there. The window that was above that, we've made that a little bit smaller and added another window that's partially hidden behind there that will end up in the kitchen. And again, we're showing the chimney on each of these elevations. Sheet 5 is our first peek at the cupola on the lower right-hand side. The view looking up Maplewood Avenue, you see the cupola there on the
That
on the
has been
garage.
lowered, right? That
That has been lowered. That's been
Yeah.
reduced by about 30%. So we took 2 feet out of the height and a 1.5 foot out of the width. Yep. The trim details we've added, they were there before, but I think they just articulate a little bit better now with the siding color. The gable frieze and the frieze around the eave ends of the roofs too.
Gotta have that freeze board.
Sheet 6 gives you 2 of the identical views from North School Street and Prospect Street corner, and that, again, shows you the cupola versus non-cupola options. And the cupola is reduced. Sheet 7 is the view looking up North School Street, again, cupola and non-cupola options. In this case, you can get a little bit more of a peek of that window that's back at the patio that was added in the kitchen also. We're also showing, they don't show up in the elevations, computer glitch, but they are showing up in the renderings. Our intent to put fencing around the HVAC units in a couple of locations there. Sheet 8 was the list of the examples of Portsmouth carriage houses that we sort of used as inspiration for this. In some cases showing what we think are prominent cupolas. Some of them are showing asymmetrical design, which we're showing in the front elevation. And some of them are showing that in town, some of these are located quite close to the street. So I know that was an issue early on. We have pushed it back, pushed that garage back from our first presentation where it was right out on the street and we had driveway coming in.
While this is an urban building, you do have the luxury of a bit of a lot there, whereas a
Yes.
lot of buildings downtown
Correct.
really didn't.
Right, yeah. We are pushed back now, I think, almost 30 feet.
You're in the middle, and I keep seeing a thing, I think it's a glitch. I keep seeing a thing that looks like a corner board on the foundation.
Downspouts. I was trying to represent that.
Those are downspouts.
Downspouts, right.
Wow, thank you. My glad I asked. Great, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, they don't show in 3D, but I was trying to represent that they'd be, those are the downspout locations that show up better than they would on the, just on the white corner board.
Nailed it. Well, you were good with the answers.
You're good with the questions, Dan.
So sheet 9 is the beginning of some of the details. We've added some detail over the top of the windows in the main house, which is the upper window detail there with a crosshead. I apologize that the bottom one was mislabeled as typical trim detail for main house. That should be for the carriage house. So we got a little bit simpler when we got to the carriage house or the garage. We took out some of those fine details. Beginnings of the wall section up through there, and cornice and eave details, and the front entrance detail.
The crown molding on the front entrance detail seems a bit shallow, a bit shy. Basically, the whole entablature section doesn't seem quite right to me, with, you know, not trying to replicate, but there was a reason for the relationship that they used on those. And I don't think that you've reached it with this entry detail, myself. I don't know how anyone else thinks about this.
The remaining sheets are the plan, which hasn't changed from what we've seen in the past, and the site plan, which hasn't changed. So if you'd like to get into the comments, we're happy to hear them.
Yeah. So who wants to start out here?
I just want to speak to your comment as well. We go to page 9. I just find that the string of glazing above the door is too tall for the trim above it. So in other words, I would increase the height of that trim above that band of glass.
More pediment?
More pediment, yeah.
It could certainly handle more. It's a big, bulky element. I think they're, both gentlemen are correct.
Okay, did you have your hand up, Reagan?
No, I'm
No,
just
you
scratching
didn't.
my head. Margaret is.
Margot.
I'm gonna jump in because I jumped in first last time and I really landed on you hard, so I think it's only fair that I jump in and say thank you very much for having made these changes. Because I think that the relationship between these two buildings is much, much better than it was before. I personally don't think you need a cupola. I think it only brings the maintenance problems down the road, so unless you're in love with your cupola, I think it's fine without that. I was a little, I was disappointed in the change in the entryway and the turn. And I understand it's because of setback, so I guess there's nothing I can say there, except to say that it's a form of entryway that I would expect in a downtown house that's on, say, like a Union Street, where it's literally right on the sidewalk. And that's why they have to do those turns,
Right.
where it was my impression that you had some room in the front, but I guess you don't. And if you don't, you don't.
We really don't.
Really don't.
I think we brought the house out to within 6 feet of the property line.
Okay. That's too bad, because I think this turned effect doesn't really go well with this
Mhm.
style house. But if there's nothing you can do about it, there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, we could look at sliding the house back a little bit,
That,
Or move the road.
That's up to
or
you.
move the road, yeah.
So,
My only concern with moving it back is we start to put those trees more in jeopardy, so I know those are important.
So, my other comments are around some of the materials. And I was having a conversation with my building expert over here about PVC. And I was wondering why we would be using PVC on window trim. In my experience, it's not the trim that usually fails. So could you tell us why you want PVC around the window trim? Because if that, particularly in the front of the house, where it's so close to the street, if you're putting PVC trim there, you really want the same trim all around the house. And I'm just worried about the PVC trim being so close to the front of that front street. And I don't know that you're really gonna get any great maintenance reduction with having PVC on a window trim. Can you tell me about that a little bit?
We do think it's gonna be easier to maintain the PVC. And our thinking on the PVC is we really wanted to use it in any place that sort of started to engage flashing details and things like that, because our fear is that if we do get a failure and we have to start taking that apart, it's more than just replacing the window trim, particularly with the head details and things like that. We need to get in and start replacing flashings and those types of things. So that was of our particular concern up around the roof and things like that. And I think once we got into PVC trim, we were carrying it into the windows, and we still have some of that interconnection and interlocking concerns with the windows.
And
It's all gonna get painted too.
Yes, it would be field
Field
painted.
painted,
That's
right.
something we insist on.
Yeah, yeah.
So the success of that, around the door trim, that is such a strong part of the building. It's something that people focus on right away. And maintenance aside, if you paint religiously, I really think that having wood all the way around this and a wooden door is really gonna make this building pop. It's just gonna make that minute difference that people don't know why it looks so much better, but they know it looks better. I agree with the comments on the crown around that surround. And I think, could you tell me, is the material listing for the front door correct, or is the rendering correct? Because one's a solid door and one is a door with lights in it.
I think our intent is to have it as a solid door.
Then I would definitely say, please make it wood. That's it for me. Oh, sorry. The screening of the mechanicals.
Yes.
I have no problem with making it not wood. But could we look at something that isn't quite so plastic as PVC, like a boral or something that doesn't read shiny acrylic, because even though you will paint it, I've seen these things and they still look fake, particularly when you have that much of it, and it's screening several feet of it.
We can take a look at it.
Thank you. That's it.
Yes, well done. I, support the massing and the scale and the size. I would keep the cupola. I think that without the cupola, it's lacking. The only real detail problem I have is the rake returns. They seem truncated. And I think I'm expecting maybe another step in there that's missing from the way the gutters hung onto that, and then the board just below or I should say the fascia board. It just seems like there's a step missing, and I could be wrong, but it just seems kind of truncated. Maybe the board underneath the return is also a little too.
The frieze under the
rake return, should it be deeper?
We could do a crown returning into it.
I think the size.
Oh, it'd be the gutter return.
Yeah, the gutter.
Yeah, the gutter
I think
would
it just needs a step in it, an extra step.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I think I think you have a good project here. Thank you.
And usually there's a substantial bed molding in between the frieze board and the soffit under.
Yeah, no, I agree generally that it's moving in a much better direction. The cupola I could take or leave. It doesn't really, I don't think it does much, but I don't think it's a problem. The one thing that did kind of bother me is the fact that the facade windows are not, and doorway are not all symmetrical. So it looks like, as you're looking at it, the door and the window above that are a little bit further to the right, or don't line up quite right. And, and again, this is a modern house, it's using traditional languages and things like that but it's still a modern house. But that, I think, just kind of irks me a little bit. I still want to see the symmetry in the facade.
You're very symmetrical.
And at first, the asymmetry of the garage / carriage house bothered me a little bit, but it doesn't really. It's obviously a modern, a contemporary garage, but it's meant to look like a carriage house, and so I'm not too put off by that. So it's really just the facade. I don't know if you can work that to make it symmetrical. Otherwise,
It's the window. I think he made a bold move by centering the building, presenting the building centered on the doorways, and just left the window as a thing added onto it. I think that was bold, and for a contemporary building, I think that makes sense. I think he did a good job. I'm not trying to argue with you, I just.
Sorry, sorry. Are you saying that it's fine the way it is?
Because he put the gable, that front-facing gable, directly over the pair of doors. He described that carriage house as the pair of doors.
Right, you're talking about the carriage house. I was thinking,
She's talking about the main structure.
Yes, I was talking about the facade.
The main entrance.
I'm sorry.
So, no, I was very confused.
The
I
house
agree
entrance.
with you. Yes, I think that the carriage house is fine. Yes, thank you. Okay, Can I throw out a suggestion without my architect not being happy with me? And this can be just so the only thing I see, and I don't have the background everybody has on this board, but over the main entry, because of just the details and stuff, I had asked if a hip roof over that would look a little better, and hopefully that is just a suggestion, to
That's
kind of
pretty-
bring everything together.
Pretty typical on this type of
Yes.
house is that
Just
type
a
of.
hood?
Interesting.
Maybe,
Yeah.
and then just to maybe,
Yeah, then we start getting into the replication, and some people on the board are gonna, well,
Give it a
wonder
chance.
about putting a Victorian hip roof over the front door and such, but it definitely needs to have heavier trim over the
Yeah.
door.
Yeah.
Well, that's the reason why when I heard
Yeah.
heavy, I was like thinking maybe the
That's a
hip roof
suggestion.
might bring that heaviness back to the front of the house.
Maybe you
a little
could
bit
get your
more.
architect to draw that too.
Well, I
But I
respect his opinion too.
I think we're getting close. I think maybe what Reagan was saying, if you look at, where was it? Where are we here? Not that one. Well, even if you went to page 1, so you've got the window centered over the door, which is correct, and then in the center, you've got the attic window seemingly, one of them looks a little off, but, you know, they're all on top of each other. So the windows on the left-hand side on the first and second floor, if they were just slid over a little bit, would that seem to straighten out the problem you have, Reagan?
Sure, either move.
To the left.
Either move the windows on the right, the door and the window into the center, or just, just make them make it symmetrical.
So it's those two windows on the left-hand side, I think,
To me, it's it's the door and the window on the right.
Oh.
It's too far apart.
I think the problem too is that it really creates the right-hand side of the door and the right-hand edge of the house are squished. They look like there's 2 inches between the side light and that corner board. And like it's crammed in there, and then you've got all this extra space to the left of that door. Where if it were moved over 6 inches to the left, it may still not be exactly symmetrical, but it wouldn't be squashed.
Yeah, it's 6 of
against
one,
the
half
house.
dozen of the other. Any other comments?
I love the changes. I love the door. I think it gives it some snap. Where I was a cupola man, I think that just putting that chimney there
Thank you.
makes it not necessary. Emptying the door to the right or to the driveway also makes a little sense on where you're gonna park the car, so that doesn't bother me too much rather than coming straight out, because then you're gonna have to go back out and around again. But centering somehow the main house, either by moving 2 windows, bar windows to the left, or the door and window a little bit to the left, I think will bring that symmetry that you're looking for.
Yeah, one or the other.
Yeah.
Heinz, have you said anything about this house?
No, I was going to, but this is fine. I think, I don't have any real profound comments to make in addition to what already has been said.
And,
So, is there a video, you said? There's like a flyer?
Were you able to load that, Nick?
Probably not gonna work here with the
Okay.
situation at City Hall.
All right, fine.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
I would just like to echo everyone else's comments and say that as far as the cupola or the no cupola, neither one makes any difference to me. So, and I think some other people have said that, so it's really whether you want a cupola or not. It's up to you.
We're arm wrestling over that now.
I know, you've gone through so much work.
Last time I built a carriage house on a house, I put a lantern on it because I couldn't stop myself.
Yeah.
But there were people that argued that it wasn't worth the maintenance or the cost.
That's,
You know what I find is that when a northeaster hits, they leak.
Yeah.
I don't care if you got louvers, you know, the water comes up and, because I've put a couple of these. Matter of fact, I was really into cupolas for a while. And one of them I ended up sticking a pan under there.
Sure. Good spot. I'd like to say that for a modern building, built on a site that's got federal and Greek revival and a whole collection of buildings around it, this is it's going to be a real treat. I think you've done a heck of a job.
thank you.
So are you ready to come back for a public hearing?
I believe we are.
I think you are also. Yeah. So you just get a hold of Nick and get scheduled.
Yep.
Anyone in the public?
Anyone in the public want to make comments about this?
The vast public.
The vast public?
There's nobody online either.
Nobody online? With that, I'll close this work session.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
It'll be a nice house.
oh, yeah, you'll be looking at it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and we've got good old Pleasant Street coming up here.
Yeah,
The traditional language
you go away from the traffic.
I need to take my meds, I'll be right back. Pleasant Street. Okay, work session requested by Mill Pond View. That's what threw me off. LLC owner for property located at 179 Pleasant Street, wherein permission is requested to allow changes to a previously approved design, changes to the sunroom and the roof design, as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 108 as Lot 15 and lies within the mixed research, office, and historic districts. He's here to present this work session.
Good evening, Carla Goodnight from CJ Architects. I also have Jake Weeder from CJ Architects and David Calkins, owner's representative. Let me just start with our brief explanation here. First of all, I'm going to dive into 1.0 and 1.1, and then we'll just have a conversation a little bit about, you know, where we're at with this project. So 1.0 is the location next to the Langdon House, which also gives you a pretty good location. This let's see where I'm at here. So the current HDC approval that we're operating under was granted to the prior owner, and I'm not sure how many common board members we have. Okay.
Several.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I think everybody but Dan.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
we were all
Pretty
here.
familiar.
All right,
It's not-
great.
It wasn't too long ago.
Okay. So it was purchased in 2021, and the new owners are in the early stages of researching and evaluating the historic structure. We're working with planning and Gorham Structural Engineering, and also currently interviewing historic preservation experts to join our team, as you know.
Sorry we couldn't.
Yes.
But I'm here.
Right now, at this time, the team is primarily focusing all of our efforts on the historic mansion house. The owners are really anxious to live there. They want to move in, they want to be in Portsmouth. And so the previously approved modifications to the captain's house are, you know, pretty much what they want to do anyway, with the exception of the round room that was built in the 80s wasn't constructed well or properly, and so that we'd like to redo that. And we'd like to put a little bit of space off of the back half, and then we would get into the other aspects as a phase 2 process. So I would say, let's see here. There's a couple of things I wanted to clarify. We prepared this timeline, which was really help everyone understand exactly when some of these things occurred on the house. This was sort of the easy part of the timeline to construct because it's moving forward, but moving backwards in time, it was a little bit more difficult to sort of parse out when all of these things took place. So I think what I'd like to do is, think I'm just sort of going back and forth because some of this we've talked about with some of you and some of this we haven't.
I know, why don't you just get started, Greg?
All right, I will. I will. All right, so, on 1.1, we have the history. And on, 2.0, we're just looking at the elevations of the house itself. We have some shutters on here. Some are falling off. We're trying to work on dating those shutters and come up with a plan for that. There's a full intent to restore windows and just strip and paint the siding, do any repair work that needs to happen, retain all the details. So the main house is going to just be restored. And Dave will talk a little bit more about that. If you look at the photograph in the partial north elevation, photograph number 4, you can see the round porch room, which is actually constructed on top of what I believe was the garden wall. So we would like to just reconstruct that with a foundation, a real foundation and insulation and modern living qualities. So, let's see, moving on to 3.0, I'd like to just make a couple of corrections on the previous approval. There were some items on the previous approval that just weren't noted on the plans that actually exist on the buildings. So in doing our inventory and research and documentation, we had located these things. So we just wanted to add that corrective sheet 3.0. 3.1.
What is it? What's the correction?
Oh, it's in red.
In blue.
Right, in red and blue. So all the blue rectangles on here have been, I mean, F is the missing chimney, D is, C and D are skylights, A and B are existing dormers, and E is another skylight that were not depicted originally.
Those are all existing.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Okay.
They're existing, but there was just, if we're amending an existing approval, we just want to
Be
correct
sure.
the existing approval to reflect what's there
Yeah.
before we start.
Could I just,
Sure.
Yes.
skylight E, is that hidden behind the widow's walk? Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That is the access to the Widow's Walk, actually.
Certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Got to get up there so you can.
Exactly.
Widow.
You gotta get up there if you're a widow and you wanna walk. So, 3
Waiting for
point,
the whalers to come home.
Well, they used to come into the South Mill Pond and drag the carcasses and cut them up.
I see.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm
It's a
getting
long
little
night.
silly now.
Historic accuracy.
Keep going.
3.1 is the documentation of the bay window area that we would like to remove. And as you can see there, that it's, you know, certainly not anything historic. Neither, or keep hitting this microphone. And the back door as well is modern. Some further detail on some of the porch construction, which is failing and also not historic. So we have started some selective demolition, and we have a report here from our structural engineer. And he has begun his assessment of the preliminary findings of some of these structural elements on the first floors. And what he's found, he hasn't been able to do all of it yet, but in what he's found so far, there's a significant amount of framing issues that are affecting the building, and there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done there. I guess I could ask you to speak a little bit to that, Dave, and,
Sure.
you know, and I don't know if you all have anything to add to that, having been there. the members who were able to come and have a look at it prior to the meeting.
Gosh, I don't know if everybody got a chance, but I didn't get a chance to go into the main building, only the outbuildings that were being redone. I don't know if there
Okay.
was a separate tour of the main building, so
Mhm.
whatever. Hmm?
It was 2 nights ago.
There were
main
just
building.
there were just a couple of us who went, because it wasn't a meeting, but we were saying that,
Okay, so anything you're referring to on the inside of the main building, I have no reference point to.
Okay, yes, I'm a little trying to figure out what you all know from before, what we're gonna know now, what,
I think we're gonna know something when he starts talking.
okay, there you go.
Do you mind if I take this packet?
You may.
An electrician would have a heyday, or at least an electrical inspector would have a heyday.
There are wires hanging all over the place.
Not just an electrician either.
Probably not.
So, David Calkins, 175 Woodlawn Circle, Portsmouth. I represent the owners of the building. To give you some quick context, I manage all of their properties. I act as their construction manager. I work exclusively for them. So I just sort of oversee all of their real estate and all of their construction projects. What we've tried to do here is recreate the picture, as Carla said, as to from when this was built under Captain Thomas Thompson to date, what has happened, and understand there's been a shift in styles, originally as Georgian, and then it has sort of undergone some changes under most likely Mark Wentworth, which we've documented here for you. So in knowing that the property has undergone some stylistic changes over the years, we're sensitive to that on the outside. The windows, as Carla said, we are, and I guess let me back up. We're still very much fact-finding. We're diving into this to figure out how deep is the rabbit's hole, so to speak. And so the windows we intend to preserve. We're talking with a couple of different companies, Saxon Solder, people like this, that's all they deal with. The exterior looks beautiful, but once you're up close, it has been neglected. It needs a lot of work. As we've consulted with people from Strawberry Bank, Elizabeth Farish, John Schnitzler, people from New England Preservation, Melissa Kershaw and Doug, even Ian Blackmore, and we're still seeking out more people, is what I'm telling people is that this is a preservation, restoration, renovation effort. We still don't know where I could truthfully say, hey, this is a preservation piece, this is a restoration, this is a renovation. So on the outside, there's a lot of preservation work, a lot of care. We are only looking at the main house, as Carla has stated, at this time because there's a significant amount of work just within that house. Moving to the inside, we invited members of the board to come through, A, to help us with our research, and B, to just get your opinion on your vast experience and what you've seen over the years so we can start to better define where these lines will be drawn in our perspective. You know, what is a preservation effort and a restoration effort, if that makes sense. So for right now, and I'll shift this back over to Carla, we're looking to operate under a lot of the approvals, or most of the approvals for the main house that the Wongs secured, with the changes as she's identified with the back kitchen bump out. I believe that's it for amendments.
The back kitchen and then just the reconstruction of the porch element.
The 1980s sunroom, yes.
Right, and one of the things that we're starting to explore is we've done a little bit of demolition, but not enough for a full structural evaluation. The demolition that's been done so far has uncovered that the structural engineer is basically recommending that we remove and replace the first floor system that's over the basement because it's just rotted. And it's so
gone.
And it's so close to the ground on 2 sides or 2.5 sides that he really recommends that, you know, we excavate around it The good news is, he thinks the foundation is in pretty good shape there. He has some preliminary thoughts on the annex as well, but he's pretty sure that's in similar shape. What did we say, there was like a foot of space between the, and they're on the framing's on the flat? So between the framing and the dirt is maybe a foot of space, and so he's waiting for us to pull up a few floorboards and give him some access, but he's pretty
I, for one, would say I was very surprised to see that on a major structure like the annex.
Mm-hmm.
You know, built by somebody with the wherewithal to even purchase this house,
Mhm.
and to go to that level of cheapness. I don't know how to say it in the proper way, but I mean, why didn't they excavate and have a cellar there?
I don't know.
Or even, you know, a decent crawl space, but something like this, I mean, the only thing it's good for is raccoons. And they're probably in there.
And just to be clear for the members who weren't at the walkthrough, the annex is obviously the back addition to the main house.
Mhm.
We haven't done any demo in the main house. And the annex, I would say, about half of it is on a crawl space, and a foot is probably a generous term. It's not accessible.
Mhm.
And the back half is on a crawl space that might be 30 inches tall or so.
So
The
his-
annex, how far do you go? Do you go over to the garages, or just the kitchen and,
No, if
or-
you're looking again at 3L, if we were in the main house
Mhm.
basement,
Mhm.
there's a cinder block out that you can look through.
Mhm.
And that is really the only way to access about the first half of that annex.
in the basement?
Yeah.
So, on 3.0, this is the annex, right?
Oh, okay.
This structure here.
All
And
right.
it's a 2.5-story major structure, you know.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, okay, I wasn't sure how much it went.
Yeah.
So what are we getting to? Or what's the
So,
ask?
basically, we were kind of, the members that were able to come were, you know, very tolerant of our entire interior speech here, because you have to really understand the condition that it's in to understand, you know, what we think we need to do with these preliminary structural findings. The annex doesn't have the foundation stability of the mansion, we think. He still needs to dig in and get a little bit more information there. And Gorham Structural Engineering also said that, you know, we'd probably have to excavate, put it up on cribbing, reframe the first floor, so now we've got the building up suspended. He also said that when the annex was added, it was added lower than the other roof, and it was, the roof line bisects the grand stair window, right in the center of the top sash. And as the two valleys come together, some main timber frames were cut.
Yeah.
And now there is a significant sagging. And if you look on, you can see the window on 3.3, how the annex is like 30 inches below the other roof line and is just bisecting that historic window. You can see it in the attic in the upper left photo. And the owners really are, very concerned about that. They'd like to restore that window.
Yeah, when you're up in the attic, you can actually see
And
part of that sash.
you can see on, let's see, where am I here? I'm trying not to hit these
If you're leading
microphones.
up to wanting to lift the roof or the building itself up so that the cornice line of that building, the annex, you're calling it, the kitchen now, if you were to raise it up so that its roof intersected with the roof of the main block,
Yeah.
we would free up the top two lights of glass in that hall window so that they would have a natural view outside, but
Yes.
it will directly impinge hard on that center of Luther doghouse dormer. On the center of the roof. Because as you raise that angular form up, it will cut right into it. Even if it doesn't require you removing it, it will make a valley condition that will be untenable.
Well,
So-
that's the valley that we need to
Sure.
reconstruct too.
The valley right now that's untenable.
Well, it's pretty bad. I mean, if you look at the roof from the
Collapsing.
underside.
Far away from the side of the.
So,
I see
yeah,
what you
okay.
mean.
Anyway,
It's collapsing in that area right now. It's in very, very bad condition. I don't know if it's salvageable, as is. It's bent and broken, and, it was all torn apart in the 80s.
Reagan
Sorry.
has something to
Yeah,
say.
no, it's definitely in bad shape. It's,
Mm-hmm.
it's not gonna last. The only issue from a preservation perspective
Mm-hmm.
is that this Annex L, whole big addition, was built, what were we thinking, like the 1860s? So, I mean, it itself is a very historic element of this house. And to raise it up or move it or something is essentially destroying that part of its history in this historic. I'm not saying that it's not necessarily warranted because of the structure, but I'm just bringing that up as a discussion piece because
Understand.
that is,
Yeah.
I mean, it's, if it were a standalone house that's 1860s, it's, you know, it's no, in my opinion, it's no less valuable as an addition to an older house than it, you know, by itself. So I think that it in itself has a lot of historic value, and it needs to be discussed. That would be a big permanent.
Right.
And if I may, we certainly recognize the historic value of not only the annex, but the house and all of these things working together as a system. I think in our mind, we're thinking the foundation was never done adequately. The annex was put on and it cut off the ceremonial stair window. It's almost like either the finances weren't in place or the thought process that wasn't in place. And do we now stand the chance to correct that, I guess? And with obviously the respect to the original intent of the house.
Well,
but
and
you would, if you put it up on, you pin the thing up, pull it up, lift it off its foundation, saw it off from the main building, which is probably not hard attached to anyway, and lift it up in the air, scrabble around, build your new foundation, drop the thing slightly back down onto that thing. Your first floor won't line up with your current first floor. So that means you have to tear the first floor that exists
has to go
out.
anyway.
And your second floor, which exists
That
and
can
lines up
stay.
with the,
It doesn't.
Does not line up.
it doesn't line up with the second floor. You
No.
have to walk downstairs to it now.
Do you remember there were a couple awkward stairs? There were like 2 steps awkwardly down
All right.
into that.
So
Okay.
that would give you a
So-
chance to correct that. I mean, I'm looking at it as a pile of mistakes, you know, and when I was a contractor, I would bump into things and, you know, and you'd go, aha, you know, this is what they did, and maybe you know why they did it. I have no idea why they did this. But I can say that respective of what Reagan is saying about the historic aspect of the annex, you need to correct these mistakes.
Well, I appreciate that, and I also appreciate what Reagan is saying, because if we could preserve that dormer, if there was anything left of it, we're gonna have to rebuild it anyway. The whole thing has to be rebuilt.
The
'cause it's-
framing is so bad.
And that whole first floor also needs to be rebuilt because it's rotten. So the things that we are going to be, you know, that would be most affected by this move up are, the window would be free. The valley, which is, it's not
Is the
repairable,
peak going to rise
would
up
need
too
to be
high?
rebuilt.
No.
No,
Okay,
no.
good.
And the first floor would need to be rebuilt, which it does anyway, and the valley needs to be done anyway.
The floor framing on the first floor of the L, is the piece that I could see when I peered through the little hole. They didn't give us a very big hole to peer through. But the floor joists that two floor joists that I could see were 2x4s and they were laid flat. So it isn't much now. There's a lot that's really not much there. And there's no question, the chairman is correct. Given the option of, practical option, there's lots of these things that you would take care of. You would just want to take care of, sort of like, well, we may as well take your appendix out, we're down there anyway.
Over there will be.
So this is an extreme example, but it'd be like fixing the crack in the Liberty Bell. Do you do that? I mean, it's not the Liberty Bell. but
No,
do
it's
you
not
fix
the Liberty
crack?
Bell. That's the only
Right.
reason. It's a kitchen L.
Yeah,
So, I guess,
it does have that.
go ahead.
Because I didn't see the inside.
Yes.
David, could you please tell me, where's this window we're talking about?
Oh, it's a cutie.
It's on here, yeah.
See this window? It's at the top of the stairs in the upstairs hall, the back of the original building.
Can you see it from out here?
You can't see it from there, but you can see it. Can you imagine this right here? This is that spot. Oh, I did it. I'm sorry. They say don't touch the screen. Okay, this is that spot right there. We're looking underneath this roof into that area right here. This is that roof. It's got a very deep overhang,
So
2.5 feet.
So in this original house.
Back wall of this
This
house.
is the back wall of the house right here.
Yep, as is this right here.
Somewhere right about here, there was a,
Just exactly like this window.
If you
Just
look at
exactly like that
3.3,
window.
3.3, you can see the
And
picture.
little
it's
summary
underneath
of it.
there. It looks like that from the inside. See,
okay,
that's
so
the
it goes-
roof
it
of the
goes-
overhang?
It goes, this goes all the way up to there?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and they built this thing right over it, and the connection between this soffit and the house is stuffed insulation and rags.
And so what you're talking about in terms of raising it is
This.
saying, take this line and bring it up to here.
And actually, they want to start down here.
Well, of course, yes, yeah, I get that, but
Yeah,
when.
take
but
the whole thing up.
But the problem is now you've got this coming all the way up here.
I don't think it's going to get anywhere near the peak of the roof, though.
It's about 30 inches
Oh,
max.
okay.
I'm pretty certain it will not
30 inches.
gain to the peak of the
You're lifting it
house
up
roof.
30.
And the inside of this.
Doesn't exist.
annex, The inside of the annex, in terms of its architectural value inside.
Doesn't exist.
It does not it does not come anywhere close to the main house. This is like the poor addition where you put the servants, kind of thing.
There's a story about that, actually.
Okay, so.
It was all redone and an apartment was added in it in the 70s, so there really was
Okay,
not.
so can I ask a really naive question?
Very good.
Why wouldn't you just ask for permission to take this entire thing off and just do what you want in the back? I understand what Reagan's gonna say about, "Oh, this was how it was built, but if it doesn't have,
I don't think you were
if
going
it
to
has
say that.
historic value, but it doesn't have architectural value in the quality of what it was built, I'm just wondering how much gyration and how much pain and agony do you want to go through to preserve the physical structure of this, as opposed to saying, well, we could do this, 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 and this, and, you know, if we could throw away those considerations, what would you do with a relatively clean slate? I'm just throwing out this,
Well, I think, yeah.
So, you mentioned it, Reagan,
Yeah, well, I mean, the interior is shot. The exterior, I still think, as you walk around it, I mean, it's got this beautiful curve. If you take the weird sunroom thing away, I mean, the wall of that is beautifully curved, the other side facing the driveway. I mean, I think there's still plenty of historic and structural integrity to the exterior, which is what our purview is.
Right.
And so you're looking at the outside of this.
We
this
did have
addition.
some windows.
Right, and so
inside the house.
my question is, so I want to just try and clarify, so are we talking about literally lifting the exterior, the shell of this up and propping it up more to make everything else line up?
We're talking about, you know, we wouldn't do this if we didn't already have to detach 3/4 of it. So we take go the last quarter, and then come up 30 inches, and we wouldn't change any of the facade, all the windows, everything stays the way it is, and that just happens to work. I don't know why, I mean, it just happens to work. The floor would come up, the ceiling, you know, it would come up.
So not just the interior, but the whole
The whole
exterior is gonna
thing
come
would
up.
come off and come up
Okay.
30 inches.
I'm just
and have
clarifying, that's what I thought.
The
I just wanted to
first
clarify.
floor would be built down 30 inches on top, so it would be flush with the original, but the second can stay where it is. Because it's already, and the third can stay where it is, because you're already stepping down into it on every level of the house.
So you're taking the whole,
Bridging of the gap
again,
between
you're gonna
this and
take the
house.
slate roof
It's
off, and the
kind of
whole
just
roof structure
cobbled
That
is
has to
gonna
come
come
up
off. You
to
just fix
repair,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
They
So
were
I've got another
recobbled.
stupid question, since we have a lot of these. It appears, when I look at 2.0, and I look at picture number 3, which is the south elevation, that the foundations appear to line up. How could that be? Why is this wrong?
The first floor is level with the main house.
Yes.
I thought you'd already said that it wasn't level and that this will correct that problem.
No, on the second and third floors.
Second floor is not level, with the
Okay.
second floor of the house.
Right, the
Ceilings
ceiling
and-
is much lower on the
Okay.
first floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ceilings
Alright.
in the main house, I believe, are 10 feet, and I think they're 8 feet.
So how is this going to work out with this, how is the first floor going to be framed on top of a foundation which is 30 inches higher than this? You're gonna walk up into this?
No, they're gonna
No.
suspend the floor, the new first floor is gonna get suspended on the foundation that they build.
The first floor will get 30 inches taller,
So the way we would.
below the windows, at the
That's what I'm
bottom.
asking, you know, it's
Yes.
just.
So the windows are gonna move up way too
No.
far.
No, they're
No?
low, they're low.
Okay, because the other
But
windows are
it'll all
enormous.
be illustrated, yes.
What
The
about
other
the,
ones-
what about
okay.
the doors?
They're all
going
much
on
lower
here?
than the front door.
So, but that's the problem with like just jacking up an entire structure. So that these doors that go onto the driveway, will you just have exterior steps leading up to
Oh,
them?
yeah, they're gonna have.
The porches that there's a porch already suggested on the one that would
One on the left.
just
Right.
have a more of a stair,
That's,
you know.
is that where you get the extra sidewall to put a roof on top of that patio, three-season room?
No,
No? Okay,
it's separate from there.
all right.
Because mostly the restriction is up against the main house on
So
that.
if you take this building that much apart, I don't know this, I don't know, boy, stuff I don't know, demonstrated in public here. This won't pass a blower door test. So to do that, you're gonna have to pull the exterior skin off this thing and resheathe it completely, because it's skipboard sheathed, or something to the equivalent of that.
There, and, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be saying this on public, recorded, but there is a stipulation in the building code that, given your, existing condition, you can only take it so far. So it's that-
IEBC.
Yeah, the good, better, best scenario. So we're taking this thing to the best of its ability with a stud that's only 2 or 3 inches deep. We're never gonna achieve an R21.
There's also historic exemption.
So there has to be an understanding there that, a blower door test and a.
All right, so I'm
historic
just
house.
wondering what's the point of, the only reason that I can think of to save this thing, having been through it in terms of architecture, is some of the clapboards on the outside and the window frames and casings, which you could salvage. You might be able to salvage some of the roofing material, but
windows, yeah.
all of the roofing material that has to do with the hips against the main house roof, they're shot now. The framing that's there doesn't pass muster now. So I wonder, and the only reason to, quote, make you people raise this structure rather than just build a new one is trying to keep you in the sandbox. I think.
Which, and going back to, I'm sorry.
Margot.
Margot, your initial question, if we could do what we want, is we would build that with the soffit levels continuing, all the nice dental molding, the cornice, everything, continuing, just like the Langdon House.
Exactly.
This is McKim, Mead, and White envy.
Yeah, well, that's different, though. This isn't McKim, and Mead, and White. I mean, if you could salvage the windows and window sills and set them aside and place them back in a newly
Absolutely.
framed structure.
You can't get the main house cornice, though. It's gotta stay as a dependency cornice. Okay?
It's interesting. I
Could be closer.
Because, no, going the Langdon House route is wrong. It's wrong.
historically, or accurately.
Historically, what they did, but they didn't have to come before us.
So subordinate could mean just a simpler,
Just one step down, good, better, best.
I believe there is.
Huh.
Yeah.
okay.
I guess,
I've been inside, that's the thing, it's a mess.
to cut to the chase, what are you asking?
Well,
I mean, you're kind of tiptoeing around and.
Well, I
and-
think what I can clarify that. I think that, you know, part of the reason we didn't come and just say, you know, it really is in terrible condition. It would be really great to salvage anything we all think is salvageable or you all think should be salvaged and just build this new and correctly and, you know.
You don't want to say tear it down.
We don't want to say that because this owner wants to move this project forward.
Okay.
We
wanna
want
do
to.
the right thing.
We want to do it right and we want to, you know,
I got you.
you know, happy to do the right thing, but, you know, they really want to get started.
Okay. I mean, surgically, I think you could cut a notch at that cornice.
Mm-hmm.
Carry the main house cornice into the L, and then rake down, and you'd free up that window. That's a surgical solution to freeing up the window, but it's not about just freeing up the window, because you have all the problems below. So you want to lift the house. That's the ask.
Either lift or rebuild at a higher position with all anything salvaged that needs to be salvaged.
Okay, all right.
And we'd go, you know, obviously rebuilding is easier, but we understand where we are and why we are here.
Right.
So,
It's a real hard ask, and it's hard for us to wrap our heads around it. I mean, there are any numbers of other ways I can think of, you know, after you rebuild the first floor and make the framing all 2x6 or whatever. And I've actually ripped pieces and added them to every stud. And I've done it a number of times. To try and get a plumb wall to put a kitchen in, you have to do that. So that does happen, you know. But after you got the second floor rebuilt, I mean, you could add stud pieces, you could just add these little cripples on top of the whole thing, like this, build cripple walls, put them all around, and just lift the second floor up and the roof.
yes, could do that too.
You could do that also.
That's very true.
Yeah, this is a carpenter's way of doing things, on the cheap. But it would work.
I think from my perspective, I think that you probably have a lot more research to do.
That's
to
true.
decide from an architectural, engineering, and construction point of view, what your various options are, what those options cost, and where the owner, what direction the owner thinks they want to go.
Yeah.
I can see a bunch of different solutions. I can see the raising and retrofitting and the,
Cripple walls?
you know, I can see doing all sorts of stuff, and I would support that if it helps to preserve the integrity of the main building, it achieves what the owners want to achieve, I can go that way. If that just is like trying to put a Band-Aid on a really bad wound, I would be in favor of taking this down, preserving the moldings, anything that you can possibly get off of that building. But if you're gonna redo that, it's gotta be the materials and the quality that should have been done in this building in the first place.
I think you'll
So,
get no argument from them.
No PVCs, no, you know, yeah. So
Understood.
I could support a rebuilding if you were rebuilding very traditionally
Yeah,
with
no
very cool.
Advantech.
Yeah, Absolutely.
You know,
Slatted floors?
no half-inch
No,
OSB.
No OSB, yeah. Well,
No,
that's
there
not-
isn't any more, thank goodness, that I'm aware of.
No, I think you need to know a lot more about what you're facing before you can really ask
Well,
us.
that's,
But I
and
think
that's
there's-
why we're
from my point of
starting.
view, there's some flexibility with conditions.
Okay.
Well, I'm torn with saving. And I'm sort of in agreement with Reagan on this, too. I don't know. I think that, you know, that Margot had a good idea, though. You guys have really got to come back and say, this is what we want done. This is what the owners want, this is what you think is the best solution.
Right. Yeah.
And,
What makes the most sense?
Yep.
come back to us. And I hope everybody realizes that, you know, one thing that she hasn't talked about is that the slate roof would be removed,
Yes.
because there are framing problems that are really bad up there that need to be corrected.
Yes, it's unfortunate.
The slate, all of the slate roofing may be removed. When you do that, you know you're gonna have to lift the dormers, because the roof doesn't, it won't intersect them correctly once you add an inch
Oh,
to it.
Oh,
Just to say. This is all costing you.
skinny the roof, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
But, it just, it's a damn mess. It's a damn mess. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't do if it was mine, but that doesn't mean I'd ask somebody else to do that. It is a damn mess.
And I encourage those of you who didn't get to go through.
I'm sure they'll
Right.
walk you through
Yeah,
anytime you wanted to.
Absolutely.
Be happy to.
It would make it easier to understand.
Yeah.
That's
see
what,
the interior.
we had asked for that, you know, for you all to come and see it.
Ah,
We just didn't have time enough to.
There's some, yes, some protocol that I'm unaware of that we needed to follow.
To advertise if we're all gonna be there at the same time. so.
Right.
That's all it is.
Huh?
That's all it is.
That's it? Okay.
Notice
Notice, okay.
and availability.
I'm sitting over here,
Yeah.
though. You can sit over there.
Is he still there? I thought he was.
Yes, see?
We could have done it Christmas
Kinda
Eve.
wait.
So we can provide notice, and then everybody can come again.
Yeah.
Once we provide notice, because we know that the interior is technically not the purview, but the interior is informing so much of this exterior that it's, you can't understand it otherwise.
Yeah.
So,
Then don't forget that you, of course, this isn't really in our purview, but the whole first floor, the original framing of this building on the first floor, most of the beams that we saw down in the basement are gone.
oh, nice.
You know, they are manually, you can just rip chunks out of them.
Stick an awl or a screwdriver.
So,
It's
there's
not
a
the
lot.
worst that I've seen, but it's close.
It's
there.
close to the worst.
The thing that makes this most difficult, I think, is that all we're talking about, this L, I assume the first L is mostly gone. And this L that's there now actually dates to most of the extant work in the main block of the house. It's the mid-19th century rehab of this building by Mr. Wentworth was so extensive that much of the interior and exterior, that some of the exterior, much of the interior of the main block of the house was redone at the same time that this L was put on.
Yes.
You can tell by the framing, the L framing is,
Was there an original fireplace mantle in that house?
I didn't see one.
I didn't see one.
No.
No,
Not
it's
what
all
we- yeah.
Victorian
It could even-
marble,
Yeah.
you know, it's high quality.
It's all 19th century.
Yes.
Interior window trim, all the first floor windows on the front of the house got Crockett's on their exterior trim.
Doors.
I mean, the front entryway, portico and beams, columns and the rest of that, all dates to this thing that we're being casual about tearing down. The sashes that are in this L currently are exact matches of the sashes that are in the rest of the house. Didn't
Yes,
see
that's what we're talking
any
about.
other kind of sash anywhere in the house other than that,
Yeah.
which we're all early replacements. But it's a mess. It's a mess. You avail yourself of the opportunity to go and look at it, it's a mess. And if you put your dollars and cents hat on, it's a big ask.
Yeah. So, I think, we've just informed everybody as you have, so we all understand, I think, the conditions that you're looking at with your annex, with the roof and with the slates.
Yes,
And,
yes, thank you for,
I'm not sure if any slates are saved, reused, or
don't know.
is it worth it to purchase new slates?
That's all gonna be a continual piece of defining at this point, if and when
Are
we
they
get.
so
get-
thin that,
Yeah, until
I have not had a chance to really look at those, but yes.
Get your structural engineer up on a roof.
Yes, he was
All right.
really anxious to crawl into that 8-inch space.
Yeah.
So the only other feedback I ask of you is if there was any, it doesn't sound like anybody's objecting to the shed roof off the first floor on the back there.
Oh, no. No, I don't think there's anybody has objected to
No one's
that.
objecting to that, and just if you look at 4.1, we're simplifying the form of that, of the round piece.
I believe that everyone on the commission should avail themselves of the opportunity to go see that thing. I don't think they can appreciate, I'm not saying you've done a disservice, but I don't think you can appreciate the magnitude of what she's talking about, looking at these images.
Okay. All right, that's what.
You're
yeah,
scaring
I
all of
agree.
us now.
Well, I agree with you, which is why we initiated this,
Sure.
to try to get as many of, as we were allowed out there, so I appreciate you all doing that, so you could,
You gotta remember, every one of us, I'm certain, walking around until yesterday, thinking that this was one of the magnificent jewels in the community.
Yeah.
Even today when I look at the outside.
Yeah, and it may be, but it's just, looking at the underbelly of it is a little bit different.
sobering.
I appreciate that there's an owner who is willing to actually really do
Thank
the right
you.
thing.
Yeah, well, it's not me, I work for it, so.
Oh.
But,
I know, but
yeah, to that
pass
point.
on the word that we're
Yeah, I
very
will.
appreciative.
And thank you for saying, and to that point, I know there's probably an underlying amount of angst to whether or not someone can step into these shoes and fulfill this. The client has not only the interest, the historical interest, hobby, background, he has the resources, and he's committed, they are committed to going through this. It's a labor of love. I'm sure you saw the sale price. This is a financially irresponsible thing from a profit perspective, so that is dispelled. So we understand, we've been through this process, not in Portsmouth, but in other places.
It's just, and I'm the one that brought that up. I'm thinking, there was this Dennett house on, off of Dennett Street, up on Prospect Hill, et cetera. Rumored to be the second oldest wood structure in Portsmouth. I mean, this thing was a very old house, probably first period. And essentially, this contractor and his helper just went in and started demoing it. And then, of course, they discovered all kinds of rotted sills and the floor joists and all this stuff. And, things had happened, and I don't know what happened. Somehow or another, we turned it down the first time, but the second time, he made a better case, and it was 6-1. I was the only one that voted against it. I said that somebody like Dave with 5 years of time could save this house. But it should have been saved. And now it's brand new, and it looks it, and it's condos. And I just, it's one of those things I have to go like this when I walk by.
It's in
very
your
sad.
backyard. It's virtually in your backyard.
Yeah, virtually, yeah. I mean, we do walk, Dennett Street quite a bit, and there it is, up there on the hill. Anyways,
Well,
that's why I'm afraid. because he didn't have the wherewithal. I don't think that this contractor, he was a young man, I don't think he'd ever bumped into something. A lot of these guys are used to, you know, marking a 2x6 for their framing and, you know, standing up walls. And they get into an old house and they're lost, you know. And he didn't have the wherewithal, and I don't think that, you know, they just didn't have the money and didn't realize what they were getting into.
I would just rather have, I'd rather have somebody buy a place like this and ask us to do work on the main structures instead of spending all the money. I mean, no disrespect to the people before, but they were doing all this, you know, fantastic building and all this grand stuff, and they were just not gonna do anything about the rotted sills and stuff.
Well, and
so-
we're starting there.
Better to start with the.
It's pretty scary when you, I hadn't even considered that.
Yeah, they were-
Because they
I mean-
could have gone down into the basement and looked up.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
They just.
All they thought of was a swimming pool that starts inside and went outdoors, and it was a very elaborate plan.
Well, and I hope if nothing else, we've illustrated that we're seeking out the people to try to help us. We're not doing this in a vacuum. We understand that there's a lot of complexity here, so.
So I applaud that, yep, yep. Lift it up.
Anybody?
Anyone in the public?
Oh, is there anyone in the public that wants to speak on this? Nick?
No, there is not.
Damn.
Okay, so I'm just gonna close this work session, and
We're having a big
we'll
historic.
continue it.
Yeah,
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I move that we continue the work session to next month.
Second that.
Aye.
Aye.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
You have something
We'll-
else to
We'll
say?
notice them to,
Yes,
whoever has not seen the building will notice you to come and take a look.
as soon as possible.
Yeah.